Good morning. I will now call the August 31st, 2022 regular meeting to order. Let me ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Before I call the roll, I would like to note for the record that Supervisor Lawson-Remer is participating via teleconference. As such, all votes will be handled by a roll call vote. With that, I will now call the roll. Supervisor Anderson. Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Here.
Supervisor Desmond.
Here.
Vice Chair Vargas.
Vargas here.
Chair Fletcher.
Fletcher here. Next on the agenda is non-agenda public communication. This is an opportunity for the public to address the board on matters within our jurisdiction but are not on today's agenda. The only action the board may take is a referral to the Chief Administrative Officer. Reminder, according to Rule 4A, members of the public who are non-English speaking and need interpretation assistance will be allotted additional time to facilitate translation. Also, according to the rules of procedure, we will hear from a maximum of 5 in-person speakers, 5 virtual speakers. Any remaining requests for non-agendized public communication will be taken up at the conclusion of our agendized meeting today. I'll ask the clerk to please call forward up to 5 in-person and 5 virtual speakers.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 13 total requests to speak on matters not listed on the agenda, 2 in person and 11 by phone. For those that have requested to speak via phone, if you could please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We will begin with the in-person speakers. As your name is called, if you could please come forward and stand against the east wall under the murals until it is your turn to speak. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board, and I'd like to invite forward Michael Brando and Audra. And again, if you could please state your name before beginning your comments.
I used the name Michael. This all ties to health. Narcissists believe their own lies, which is why they can be such convincing deceivers, often attracting a host of minions who believe in them. Grown adults with integrity can't imagine why another grown adult would say such terrible things in explicit detail, unless it were true. Especially when that person appears credible and can look you in the eye while doing so. Many of us might never have imagined we'd come across individuals who don't feel remorse or guilt for their actions and who will do whatever it takes to gratify the demands of their egos by securing money, power, attention, contacts, sex, attention, positive or negative, and possessions, all without giving any thought for how their actions might affect others. We lack the means to understand how these people think because we ourselves just don't think that way. Consider who this might be describing here, but it's more than one. Safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective. For the last year and a half, we've had people here acting as if they practice medicine, telling everybody to get the bioweapon transmogrification injection. And as far as I know, these people do not have private membership associations, so they have no reason to be practicing medicine. People are waking up as the illnesses accrue. May this be a good day for those who seek truth.
Username Audra. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the cause which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such such a form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, invents a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. That couldn't be more important.
Now we will hear from those that have requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you will be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. I'd like to remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. We will begin with our first caller. And again, if you could please state your name before beginning your comment.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Terry Ann Skelly. I called in today after listening to the speakers yesterday, and I'd like to add my name, the parents, community groups, health organizations who support for yes on Proposition 31 coming on the November ballot. As a youth advocate who has volunteered for youth mentor and tutoring programs, I understand the fragility of teens' lives. Proposition 31 would require removing candy-flavored smoking and vaping products off store shelves, which would go a long way in preventing countless youth and youth adults from ever trying them. A doctor and UCSC researcher, Laura Crotney-Alexander, wrote in the UT over the weekend, and I quote, "Every time tobacco companies addict a new generation of kids on nicotine, they put Californians, including non-smokers, on the hook for billions of dollars in health care-related costs," end quote. Ending the sale of candy-flavored smoking and vaping products is a proven, effective policy solution to reduce youth tobacco and marijuana use. I stand with American Heart Association, the American Lung Association, American Cancer Society, Cancer Action Network, and Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids in urging California voters to support Proposition 31. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
That was excellent, Michael Brando. He was talking about you, Nathan, just in case you didn't realize, but you do. Anyways, okay, Consuelo, how their system works. The people are too distracted, too medicated, too stressed, too fluoridated, essentially a zombie slave. Too damn distracted, their system, too damn distracted to critically think. And that is exactly how they like the people, on a hamster wheel to nowhere, paying their taxes, asking permission to live their lives, the lives they were not destined to live. Humans actually believe that it's government that gives them their rights. Every constitution in the world is a code of conduct for governments to follow, to ensure, to protect, to defend, to vindicate, and uphold those rights, our rights. The government does not give us our rights. The government is obliged to protect those rights. The three types of people on earth right now, those too brainwashed or stupid to be even able to comprehend that this isn't really happening, to those who understand what is happening but are too afraid to voice what they know for fear of judgment, and three, those that understand and are willing to fight for their freedom and put themselves through ridicule in order to not only save themselves but the entire planet. There is no justification for all your acts of injustice. You all know what you are doing. You all know that you're following an agenda. You keep your blind and gullible constituents happy by giving them stupid bullshit proclamations and rewarding them to be on their good side. Well, we see right through you. We will not stop calling you out. every opportunity we have. Never. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Barbara Gordon. I'm a public health educator, and my work with parents and young adults who are very concerned with the high-potency marijuana products that can contain up to 90% THC. These concentrates are the most popular products sold at marijuana businesses, but sadly, these products have the most devastating effects on users' mental health. On the CDC website, reports in the U.S., about 3 in 10 people who use marijuana have cannabis use disorder, the medical term for marijuana addiction. For people who begin using marijuana before 18, the risk of developing this cannabis use disorder is even greater. Parents plead with you as policymakers to listen to our scientific community and our medical professionals, like Dr. Lev, an emergency doctor at Scripps Hospital in San Diego, who says, we've been seeing the problem for a while now with marijuana. Depressive breakdowns, psychotic, suicidal thoughts, all related to cannabis. Dr. Lev goes on to say, I want people to know the truth about this drug. We've been sold a lie that cannabis use is harmless and even has multiple health benefits. Again, I urge the Board of Supervisors to consider capping or regulating the percentage of THC concentrates as you move forward with permitting marijuana businesses in the county. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and Board of Supervisors. My name is Becky Raff. I'm a parent and a public health educator concerned with the normalization and commercialization of marijuana in our county. Last night, I was pleased to see that on San Diego Fox 5 News at 10, marijuana was the headline, stating, tonight, we're taking a look at the dark side of the marijuana legalization debate. Some studies say psychiatric diseases such as anxiety and depression can spell real trouble for cannabis users. A young man named Ethan was interviewed, describing his horrific experience with marijuana. He was diagnosed with cannabis-induced psychosis, which involves severe hallucinations and delusions. He stated, I had to quit my job because the voices in my head were so distracting. Dr. Nora Volkow, the director of the National Institute of Drug Abuse, was interviewed and stated, we are seeing people being exposed to higher and higher content products, and it's much more widely available. Just because marijuana has been legalized does not mean it's not harmless, especially in adolescent brain development. Exposure early on to THC modifies the brain in ways that makes it more susceptible later on to other drugs. The story goes on to say manufacturers have found ways to add marijuana to vaping devices, edibles, and wax that can contain nearly 100% pure THC, a significantly higher concentration than from decades ago. Aubrey Adams, director of Every Brain Matters, stated that cannabis-induced psychosis is real. Once the brain is broken, once it's addicted, it's really hard to get it back. Fox 5 News concluded by describing today's marijuana as much more powerful and sometimes lazy.
Thank you. Your time is up. We'll go to the next caller.
Good morning. My name is Diane Grace. There has been much discussion regarding the problems being experienced by the unsheltered in the county, especially from residents living or doing business nearby. We are saddened, frightened perhaps, and dismayed about the county's inability to create more solutions. We recognize that physical handicaps and chronic diseases, mental health problems, and drug addictions often co-occurring, complicate the necessary solution. I am hopeful that you, as Board of Supervisors members, recognize the role of drug addiction. We were recently told by Dr. Sharif Moore, an epidemiologist, that a, quote, burgeoning public health crisis is only getting started regarding drug addiction, and that lawmakers need to rein in the for-profit addiction industries like the sale of tobacco, marijuana, and CBD products, end of quote. As a parent who has spent countless hours on parent and community boards, I wonder if we all really comprehend what the consequences of having marijuana storefronts in rural areas with their pervasive signage and advertising. This visibility and promotion threatens, sabotages, and diverts the lives of young people who may well decide that an acceptable form of problem solving is getting high. Good health is precious, and the county should only involve themselves in those business activities that will enhance good health, especially mental health. Thank you.
Thank you. For the remaining callers that requested to speak on matters not listed on the agenda, please hang up and call back at the conclusion of the session. Chair Fletcher, that concludes the request for non-agenda public communication this morning.
Next on our agenda is approval of the Statement of Proceedings minutes for the regular meeting of August 17th, 2022. I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second. All right, we have a motion by myself, second by Supervisor Anderson. I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas? Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present voting aye.
We'll now proceed with the formation of the consent calendar. Members of the public will have the opportunity to comment on items once supervisors have had the chance to move any items from consent to discussion or make any comments that they would like. We'll start with Supervisor Anderson. Are there any items that you wish pulled for discussion or comments you wish to make?
Not this time, thank you.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Not at this time, thank you.
Supervisor Desmond.
Not at this time, and I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you, Supervisor Desmond. Vice Chair Vargas. All right, we have a motion by Supervisor Desmond, seconded by Vice Chair Vargas to approve the 4 items on consent. I'll ask the clerk to call forward any public speakers.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We do have 3 total requests to speak on the items on the consent calendar. We have 1 individual in person and 2 requesting to speak by phone. For any members of the public that requested to speak on items on the consent calendar, if you could please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We will begin with the in-person speaker. I'd like to invite forward Audra. You will have 2 minutes to address the board.
Username Audra. So number 1, I don't know, it just reminds me of the road diets that Sandag wants to do. But to vacate some property, it's going to take $4,000 to process that. It's a little bit weird. And then I wonder when there's going to be a concrete warehouses that fit into your climate action plan. Will that be sustainable and environmentally friendly? Probably not. And then the next vacate, Vigilante Road, it's also $4,000 to process that. That's good. And so does that also fit into your plan? Probably not. And then the McClellan Airport. So you want to charge them $63,334.666 a month more. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of an increase. And it's like, if we're trying to help people here, it just doesn't make sense to me that we are charging that much. And then it's going to you guys? Why do you own all these airports? That's a little bit scary that you guys actually own those, 8 of them. 8. And so did you address the lead that the guy came and was speaking about yesterday? Did you tell him, hey, we're going to do something about that that's not environmentally friendly, it's not safe for the children? Or are we just going to ignore that, like you guys ignore everything? You itchy today, Nathan? Like, if you guys actually do say it would be nice. I mean, you can answer questions. You just choose not to. So in your silence, I'll assume that you're not going to do anything about the lead. But yet here we're talking about all this environmental stuff. It's good. Double speak.
Thank you. Now we will hear from those that have requested to speak by phone. Again, when it is your turn to speak, you will be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. I would like to remind the callers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking, and we will begin with our first caller.
Truth. At the McClellan-Palomar Airport in Carlsbad, leases require rent to be renegotiated every 5 years to align with current market rates. This guarantees higher prices for operation and for everything else related to this airport. Higher rent may also affect jobs. Item 2, just for the record, prototype place in Otay Mesa is not on Google Maps. Do you supervisors remember laughing last land use meeting when I asked about the street with no name? Well, this prototype place is the street that can't be found. Item 1 is reducing the speed limit to 30 miles an hour on Nordall Road. The lowering of speed limits is to gradually implement the U.S. Department of Transportation's Complete Streets Plan, whose policies include controlling and reducing vehicular speed, amongst many other anti-car agenda goals. This item also aligns with DOT's Complete Streets when it says, quote, the transportation system must be safe for all modes of transportation, end quote. Other modes of transportation refers to active transportation. That's walking, biking, and scootering. Believe it or not, public transit is rarely considered in the other modes of transportation. For example, the World Economic Forum Sustainable Road Transport and Pricing White Paper plans, quote, parking, emission, congestion, and curb pricing schemes. As prices increase for road use, individuals will be forced to choose alternative paths or times, or walking, biking, and scootering. Personal car usage and even public transport could quickly become for the elite few, end quote. That's some real pieces of work you got there for friends, Nathan.
And Chair Fletcher, not seeing the other caller in the queue, that is going to conclude public comment on the consent calendar this morning.
We have a motion by Supervisor Desmond, seconded by Vice Chair Vargas to approve the items on consent. Ask clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
And Chair Fletcher.
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present voting aye.
We're going to go to our first discussion item, an update on the Integrated Regional Decarbonization Framework and design of a playbook. This item was initiated by Supervisors Vargas and Lawson-Remer. I want to ask them if they'd like to make any introductory comments. If not, we can go straight to staff presentation. Presentation? All right.
Just go ahead. Yeah.
We'll turn it over to staff for the presentation.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and members of the board. I'm Murtaza Samusa from the Office of Sustainability and Environmental Justice within the Land Use and Environmental Group. Today, we will provide an update on the Regional Decarbonization Framework, our plans for implementation with community outreach and engagement, and potential next steps. The actions we take in getting to zero carbon emissions in the months and years ahead are going to be the true test of the success of this framework. The scale of this effort to tackle the climate emergency cannot be achieved in silos by an individual, government, or business alone. We are building a movement. Collective action is key to it, and our partnerships with community-based organizations will lead the way. An equity-centered approach would position our region competitively for public and private investments while ensuring that our workers and underserved communities are not left behind. Following this item, you will hear two other items in the agenda from our departments, Planning and Development Services and the General Services Department, on sustainability initiatives to support this framework, as well as the county's climate action plan. I will now turn it over to my colleague, Rebecca Appel, to provide the update.
Our global climate is changing, and the effects are being felt every day in our local communities, and we now know that none of us can address the climate emergency on our own. This collaborative framework is at a critical juncture, as we now have the scientific studies, we're transitioning to action. To recap from our prior board presentation, we're taking an integrated approach to the framework from study to action. First, the technical report by UC San Diego and the University of San Diego. This is the first study of its kind that scientifically establishes the strategies to eliminate regional emissions of heat-trapping gases. This study analyzed that over half of the emissions across the region in 2035 and beyond would still remain unaddressed even if every local government implemented their respective climate action plans. Second, a workforce development study by Inclusive Economics to ensure we have high-quality green jobs. It explores the ways in which actions to lower pollution from the region's industries can do so in ways that support workers. Both this and the technical report are complete, posted on our website, and available in all county libraries. And third, an implementation playbook, which we are now beginning. We had previously referred to this as an implementation pathways report, and will provide more details in this presentation. During the past year, in the development of this framework, we have presented at 4 global and local conferences, including the Zero Emissions Conference at the United Nations 26th Conference of Parties, 11 city councils and tribal councils, and we're tentatively on more council dockets this fall. 22 workshops and public meetings. The video recordings and materials for these are posted on our website, and 108 individual and group meetings upon request from cities, regional agencies, tribes, businesses, industries, labor unions, environmental, and community organizations. In total, over 1,500 attendees have participated in our events, not counting the audiences for global conferences and city council meetings that were being webcast live. The next few slides provide an overview of some of the feedback we've received and how we're incorporating them moving forward. Our outreach has broadly focused on the 4 decarbonization sectors: buildings, electricity, land use and natural climate solutions, and transportation, as well as on climate-related jobs. In addition to the feedback, questions, and ideas we received during our workshops and meetings, we also received 730 specific written comments that were all reviewed and addressed in the final versions as feasible and will continue to inform our implementation work moving forward. Here's some examples of the input we received. We heard about maintaining and growing high-quality careers for our workforce in the green economy, the cost of housing and transportation opportunities for low-income families, the need to balance ecological conservation with renewable energy generation, and the economic viability of our small farms with escalating land values. Our 31 authors addressed each of these comments. For example, by providing high road strategies for workforce transition, describing how subsidies for electrical appliances could support low-income families, a new energy siting scenario that preserves the backcountry from utility-scale wind and solar, and research on farming practices that can keep and hold carbon in the soil and plants. Based on past board direction and community input, we've added a 5th sector, food systems and circular economy, which will look at agriculture, food systems, and the life cycle emissions of resources. A circular economy is one that reduces the use of materials, reuses materials, and recaptures waste as a resource to create new materials and products. For example, the brewing industry has made strides with the upcycling of spent grains as building materials. We also recognize that our regional partnerships need to extend to our neighbors to the south in Baja California, as well as the East and Imperial Valley, to implement strategies that cut emissions and pollution and advance economic development in all of these sectors. Since we last updated the board, we've extended out our timeline through spring of next year to ensure robust engagement and outreach, and that all voices are brought along through the design of implementation actions. The yellow highlight shows where we are now. During the fall, specific topic working groups with the community, local governments, and interested stakeholders will help draft the implementation playbook by the end of this year. Early next year, we will organize regional convenings in partnership with community-based organizations to receive public input on our proposed actions. These convenings are intended to be regional, include all cities, the unincorporated county, and the sovereign tribal lands. We intend to seek board adoption of the integrated framework in spring of 2023 and receive direction to pursue implementation and associated environmental reviews. Recognizing that this is not a directive, this time from now through spring will allow us to continue building momentum collectively with all our partners, public, private, nonprofits, business, labor, and communities, to come to the table with solutions to decarbonize our region. Our next slide will provide details on outreach and engagement. Here's our plan for public outreach from now until we return to the board in spring. Our goal is to reach every stakeholder, whether they're an expert in our special topics or a community member that are vulnerable to climate change impacts, such as extreme heat. The special topic working groups will contribute their knowledge and experience in each of the 5 areas. These are open to members of the public to sign up. A new regional equity working group will be formed in September. The purpose of this group is to integrate social equity in regional climate action, address past and present environmental injustices across the region, and to ensure that these injustices do not occur in the future. We'll be reaching out to the board offices with criteria for membership and for your recommendations. We intend to host virtual public workshops during key milestones for the project, as well as in-person regional convenings in each supervisorial district early next year. And we intend to continue our existing technical working group, adding experts in tribal, indigenous knowledge, military, and public health. So what will we do with all of this input and information? Our organizing framework for individual and collective actions for getting to zero carbon emissions is going to be an implementation playbook. We're starting with the best practices by learning from measures that local governments have already adopted in climate action plans by each topic. However, this playbook is not a plan. It does not have enforceable mandates and milestones. It will be a menu of options with plug-and-play strategies organized by the 5 topics we discussed. And it will be an accessible resource for all players in the public and private sectors to design, finance, and implement decarbonization projects, programs, and policies. With the support from the University of San Diego's Energy Policy Initiative Center, the implementation playbook presented to you in spring next year will provide guidance on 3 levels. First, we'll draw out actions that each individual business and local government can do on their own. Second, building upon those actions, we'll explore what we can do in the operations of our own county facilities, as well as community-wide actions for the unincorporated area. And third, emissions knows no boundaries, so we'll identify actions from a regional perspective where we can gain efficiencies and greater outcomes for more collective impact. Here are some examples of the strategies and actions that local governments can utilize. For buildings, look at ways to make existing buildings more energy efficient and homes resilient to hotter summers and cooler winters. In electricity, provide information such as benefits and costs so that residents and businesses can choose power that is carbon-free. For food systems and circular economy, policies to encourage bulk purchase of locally grown food and diverting food scraps from landfills to create products like compost and mulch and return them to the soil and working lands in order to grow more nutritious foods. In land use and natural climate solutions, establish green streets criteria for capital improvement projects that include nature-based stormwater solutions, tree canopy, and green space. And for transportation, develop buyout or trade-in program for retirement of older vehicles with internal combustion engines. I'll now turn it over to Murtaza to present the potential next steps for the framework.
When we come back to you in spring, highlighted here in green are the items for board consideration to adopt the 3 components of the integrated framework: the technical report, the workforce study, and the implementation playbook. The implementation playbook will be the bridge between the studies and the implementation actions. We will be bringing ideas for regional actions that the board could initiate. I have some examples in the next slide. And highlighted in blue are possible items for board consideration and direction in spring. This could include a regional analysis of emissions sources and measures to address them, and working together with other local governments to explore a regional climate action plan. This regional climate action plan would be a voluntary effort among participating local governments to collectively propose measures and timelines for reaching our mutually agreed upon goals to get to zero carbon emissions. Now this leads us to regional actions. As Rebecca mentioned, greenhouse gas emissions knows no boundaries. There may be ideas and strategies in the implementation playbook that should be pursued at a regional level. Examples of such approaches from that implementation playbook could include rooftop or community solar options for renters, particularly low-income households, a coordinated approach to adopting state standards on building electrification, such as by developing a model ordinance, and identifying tree planting needs throughout the region and taking into consideration health factors of vulnerable populations, such as poor air quality and concentration of heat in certain neighborhoods. Now, these are just a few examples of multi-jurisdictional and cross-sectoral partnerships. We know that with the creativity of our universities and innovation industries, we can do a lot more. The San Diego region is uniquely positioned to take a leadership role on decarbonization, both nationally and globally. We are looking to bring you actions that go beyond what an individual local government can do to achieve more collectively. Today's action is for the board to receive the update on the integrated regional decarbonization framework. This concludes our presentation, and we are available for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we hear from our public speakers, let me give Vice Chair Vargas and Supervisor Lawson-Remer, who initiated this effort, the opportunity to make any comments if they would like.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I want to thank Sarah and her team, Dr. Mutansa, and for all of their efforts putting together this process to really advance the DCAB framework. I really appreciate that the implementation playbook is being set up to consider how we will work with local jurisdictions to make collective progress towards meeting our region's climate action goals. And I think if anything we've learned is that we can't do this alone. We have to work together with local governments, organizations, businesses to develop a resource guide for action in different sectors. I really appreciate that we're also looking into our food systems and agriculture to consider other policy tools in that sector, and appreciate the analysis of what can be done with other public agencies like the Port of San Diego, Regional Airport Authority, and potentially some of our large private companies in the region. Don't forget APCD. And I'm also looking forward, particularly through the office, about what the Office of Sustainability and Environmental Justice will be doing to develop the process and guidelines for how social equity is going to be addressed across the region's climate action plans. I think that's really important. And again, we all need to be on the same page when it comes to equity and use our collective power to really leverage our actions for our most impacted communities. So I'm really looking forward to that. I have some recommendations that I'll bring forth as we're moving forward, particularly about special topic working groups and figure out how we can connect that to the work that's being done at CARB and APCD so that it's all one. And just great work. And I'm happy to make a motion when we're ready to do that. And again, thank you. Thank you for this work.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Thank you so much. I have a number of comments across items 5, 6, and 7. But Chair, just wondering, do you want me to, or do you want to just focus on 5 now, and we'll take 6 and 7 separately, or should I kind of tackle all the aspects of the RDF at once?
No, I would just do 5, and then when we're done with 5, we'll come back and do 6, and then we'll do 7.
Okay, great. Probably easier for everyone else. There's a lot in here. So, you know, first of all, I just want to echo Vice Chair Vargas's comments and thank you to staff as well as the team at UCSD and USD EPIC for all of your work on these items, and particularly the collaboration and the research investment that it took to get the technical report to this point, as well as the workforce study. And, definitely strongly agree that looking at how we collaborate across jurisdictions, not only what can the county do, but how do we be a partner and a catalyst for regional collaboration across all of our different silos and different jurisdictions is really, really vital. I just want to take a moment to kind of comment on some approaches that I've seen that have been taken in this regard that I think we should take a look at. I think Chair Fletcher and I had the opportunity to participate in the Behavioral Health Workforce Conference a couple weeks ago, and it really, to me, was a model of how you can utilize the power of convening and the power of a really thoughtful, well-researched report, along with policy recommendations to get the relevant stakeholders around the table, get folks focused on some of the solutions to the problem, and then be able to move actors forward. So my question is for Sarah Agassi and the team of whether it would, whether what's conceived in these recommendations regarding the convenings and the meetings, whether there's scope to do something of similar to the kind of workforce partnership behavioral health symposium that we saw that was so effective a couple weeks ago.
Chair Fletcher, Supervisor Lawson-Remer, yes, absolutely. We are happy to look at those models and incorporate that in the outreach to come over the next several months.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I think part of it was there really was a lot of thoughtful work put into making sure that the findings of reports are presented in a way where the policy recommendations and the recommendations for action are really clear and immediately able to be moved on by folks who are convened, and that there's a lot of work to be done to make sure that everyone's invited and has a seat at the table for those kinds of events. So happy to talk further offline, but I just wanted to highlight that and make sure that we're looking at that as a model. I think the other thing I just wanted to ask you all is, as we move forward with the playbooks and with these efforts around collaborations, do we have a plan to kind of continue reporting back and getting guidance, regarding what kind of stakeholder groups make sense, whether we might need a JPA or other more sort of sustainable, collaborative, interjurisdictional forums in which we might want to embed this collaborative work.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer, we are happy to bring that sort of information back to the board as it relates to, I believe you're referring to more of kind of that governance structure for how, once we have the playbook, we might be able to move forward as a larger community. So we're happy to bring some options forward for the board's consideration.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful. I think as you begin to develop the playbook and circulate this and talk to jurisdictions and stakeholders, I think it will become pretty clear that we're going to need some kind of more ongoing forum and body to coordinate that work. And I think it would be helpful to have that as part of the conversation as we develop the implementation playbook. So again, I look forward to the discussion on 6 and 7 because it's all interconnected, but at least as far as 5 goes, I think this is a great step forward, and just really appreciate the work of staff and EPIC and USD and our entire community and UCSD in making this happen. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's go to our public speakers, and then when we come back, we'll go to Supervisor Desmond.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 22 total requests to speak, 7 individuals in person, and 15 requesting to speak by phone. I'd also like to note for the record, we received 9 e-comments on this item. All 8 were in favor, none were in opposition, and none were neutral. For any members of the public that have requested to speak on this item by phone, if you could please dial in the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We will begin with the in-person speakers. Those in favor, as your name is called, please come forward and stand against the wall under the murals until it is your turn to speak. I'd like to invite forward Joel San Juan, Karina Contreras, Sean Elias, Christina Margnez, Jim Whalen, and Matt Adams. You may come up in any order, and if you could please state your name before addressing the board, and you'll have 2 minutes.
I think I was first, right? Karina Contreras? Any order. Oh, any order. Perfect. Well, my name's Karina Contreras. I am a council member for the City of Vista, District 1, and I'm here in that capacity. And first, I want to thank the Board of Supervisors for the ability to really tackle the climate crisis. Definitely having an implementation playbook is a really good sign that we can put our trust in the Board of Supervisors to actually implement some of this work. But I want to talk about a few things. One of them are cool zones that are climate resilient centers. In the City of Vista, we have 2 cool zones. They happen to be in 1 district. And they are much needed in other places, not just right next to each other, right? And that is the same for other cities like Escondido, right? We need to make sure that we have equity when it comes to cool zones. There's intense heat that's coming our way, and it will only get worse as the climate crisis gets worse. But how are people going to get to these cool zones and climate resilient centers? That means that we need to have better transportation, which really means that we need to seriously invest in active transportation programs like cycling, walking, and taking public transit. The Buena Creek Station is in unincorporated San Diego County, and we really need to connect that station better. That's under your all's jurisdiction, and there's a lot of opportunity there. So we can have transportation corridors that have native plants that are site suitable to help people connect, help people get to their jobs and to home. And thank you very much for your time.
Next speaker.
Good morning, board. How are you guys doing today? My name is Sean Ellis. I'm a political organizer for the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Union. We represent over 1,900 members here in the San Diego County region and Imperial County. We stand in support of this framework with extreme urgency in taking a look at electrification. My members build the natural gas systems and the natural gas power plants that has powered this region for so many years. As we look at this framework, like I said, we are in support of it. There is so many good items to help our community to fight the climate crisis, but we as a local do not believe that electrification will be the answer. Currently right now in Sacramento, our great governor in the last week and a half is bringing in new systems that are going to supply your base load green energy from hydrogen to nuclear energy to carbon capture to sustainable fuels, and we see it on the framework, but we never talk about it publicly. All we ever talk about is solar, wind, and battery storage. Let me make this very clear. We are in support of an all-of-the-above approach, and we are in support of this framework. But we want to give you urgency in looking at hydrogen hubs and finding out real solutions that are going to not only provide the electricity that's not intermediate to all of our people, but to also provide good middle-class jobs that my members have currently, my 1,900 members that are living in this county, being able to afford a house in San Diego County. They don't have to live in the IE. They don't have to do that. And that's from the same fossil fuel industries that we are vilifying right now. So like I said, I want to be on the record very clearly today because we got 2 more items I cannot wait to talk about with this board and with the people that are going to make serious impacts on the workloads of so many union members, particularly in the pipe trades, and the thousands that are not organized and unionized. Thank you for your time, and we are in support of this framework. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Yep. Good morning. Christina Marquez, speaking on behalf of 3,500 electricians, power professionals, working families in San Diego and Imperial counties. Our union has been a longtime proponent of clean energy future, locally and statewide. We strongly support reaching zero emissions by 2035 if doing so is intertwined with creation of good middle-class jobs and labor principles inclusive of prevailing wages, electrical state certification requirements, and employment of skilled and trained local workforce using policy mechanisms to enforce these. The regional decarbonization framework is very strong on these values and more. As said in the report, we want to emphasize that we need to make sure that all the new and existing renewable energy jobs are high-road, high-wage jobs with clear pathways to state-approved apprenticeships for training and equal opportunities for the communities of concern. That would help to put the families of San Diego region on an upward pathway to better quality of life. Implementing actionable policies is the key to achieving this in an equitable manner. The RDF is just that, a great framework to follow for the County of San Diego, and together with the teamwork of the city, the environmental justice groups, and the trades, we can accomplish the goals established. We thank the staff for the excellent work, and we look forward in working more with you. Let's keep working together to lower GHGs in our beloved County of San Diego and uplift the working families to build our green future. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and members of the Board of Supervisors. Again, I want to express my sincere appreciation for your service. I work in commercial scale renewables, and I'm also on the county's advisory group regarding the RDF. I'm here in support of staff's current efforts, and I want to touch on two topics. The first one is, we'll call it the realities of local generation and resilience.
Would you mind stating your name for the record?
Sorry, I should know by now. It's Jim Whalen, J. Whalen Associates. Again, the first point is the realities of local generation, local resilience. Obviously, the desire is for the lowest price to the ratepayers, but as the supervisors approve projects, that adds cost. And I want to give you a little bit of a snapshot of that. If local resilience is a key goal, then we have to recognize the reality that we're going to have projects in the backcountry. So if staff is saying we want to avoid utility scale being sited in the backcountry, that runs counter to what you're proposing to do with the RDF. I think, though, the answer is community benefits, working with the community from the beginning. We're bringing a project to you that will not have opposition from a planning group for the first time in my career. And the reason we had that happen is we worked with the community to come up with a community center that they're going to want. We're also working with SDG&E on a microgrid so that there's actual benefits to the community in a shutdown. Solar provides the batteries that provide the energy for the community when the power's shut down. The second thing I want to talk about is continuing to push for a much broader deployment of EVs. There's no way we're going to get to zero decarb if we're not pushing for electric vehicles. And I would like to recommend respectively again that we consider pushing for the amendment of SB 743 for rural counties that allow for EVs to be used as a mitigation measure. And again, I'm happy to continue working with the county. I appreciate your time.
And as the next speaker is coming to the podium, I would like to invite forward the speaker in opposition, Audra, and then last call for Joel San 1. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. My name is Matthew Adams. I'm here on behalf of the San Diego County Building Industry Association. I want to start by expressing our appreciation for the opportunity to participate in this discussion. It's a very worthwhile discussion and one that needs to be addressed. I know we're trying to address these issues and especially the severity of the issues. And I agree with what Supervisor Vargas said a few moments ago, where it can't be done in a vacuum. We have to work together. And we want to work with the county to address these issues. That's why we want to participate in the upcoming workshops. And we want to ensure that the actions that we take, that you take, also include some robust incentives to try to offset the negative impacts that this will have on housing costs and housing productions. Because you don't want to try to solve one crisis at the expense of the other. And that's by working together, we can achieve that goal. Case in point, Governor Newsom's initiatives last week to accelerate the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. The initial estimates coming out of the California BIA and others puts it at $50,000 per unit. And that's a lot. And that's not going to be helpful in terms of our efforts to address the crisis of middle-income housing. So what we need to do is work on incentives like buy-right production, self-certification. A middle-income density bonus program would be essential. I also want to echo what Jim Whalen said a moment ago about EV vehicles and amending state law so EV vehicles could be a mitigation measure on VMT and other things. The state clearly is moving in the direction of electric vehicles, so it certainly makes sense to do that. So we look forward to the continued conversation, the pursuit of mitigation efforts, and I thank you for your time.
Username Audra. Oh, man, this is such a globalist agenda. It's the World Economic Forum's agenda. That's not just a meeting, Nathan. It's a whole movement that you claim it's not. And they're trying to give us the Great Reset, right? You know about that. You know Klaus. What's up? But all the things that you're doing, I mean, you want to retire polluting vehicles. Where are you going to put them? Because you want to get rid of landfills. So it's like, what are we going to do with all these vehicles when you implement having an electric vehicle? Doesn't make any sense. And you don't even have enough charging stations to charge them. And the power grid isn't going to be able to sustain that. So it's like that man was saying, like, you don't want to create a problem with one of the things you're implementing, but that's everything that you guys do. Then later on you'll say, well, we'll deal with it when the time comes. But it's like, you were talking about outreach. Well, do you actually ask the community, or is it only stakeholders? It seems that you guys only go to people that are going to agree with you and, you know, just go, yeah, we want that too. But you don't ask others when they dissent from that because you don't want to hear it. But it's like, as a community, we should be the ones, because we are above the government. You guys have just made people believe that you are above us, but you're not. You're supposed to listen to the people. You don't just ignore them and do whatever you want. That's not the reason why you guys are there. And you've confused people with that. As you sit on your phones and don't even pay attention to the people that you're supposed to be working for. Instead, you want to be our boss and tell us what to do, but you don't even ask us for our input, because this isn't something that is going to work.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and honorable members of the Board of Supervisors. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I support the framework and the climate action plan, and
could you please state your name for the record, sir?
On that, and I appreciate your request.
Sir, could you state your name? We need you to state your name for the audio record, please.
I'm sorry?
Say your name.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Joel San Juan.
Thank you.
I'm currently a member of the Behavioral Health Advisory Board. And I appreciate your request for community input in all these areas: building, land use, food systems, electricity, transportation. I just want to point out one thing, and that is water conservation. We are all aware that water is used in all these areas and everything we do. So therefore, water conservation is critical. And I think we need to have more programs for conservation of water. And also, electricity. The total electricity we have in California, 20% of that is used in extraction, delivery, processing of water. 20%. So if you cut down on water use, you cut down on the need for electricity as well, and so it will be helpful in the climate action plan. So I look forward to working with you and the county in terms of building up programs that will focus on water conservation, because I think that's key and very essential in dealing with all these areas that you have here, water and electricity. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear from those that have requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you will be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. Again, I would like to remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. And we will begin with our first caller.
Yes, hi. I appreciate the ability to speak. My name is Craig Jones. The staff in a report to you this morning said that you now have the scientific studies to inform us how to take action to address climate change. The county is to be congratulated with the regional decarbonization framework. It has great potential for us to do what we need to do regionally. But the left hand and the right hand need to be coordinated with each other. The RDF won't come back to you, the Board of Supervisors, until the spring. But in the meantime, you're going to be asked to take action on other items which will absolutely torpedo the intent of the RDF. I ask you to read again, you Board of Supervisors members, please read again the UCSD study in the RDF. We must not develop the backcountry with urban and suburban sprawl. But now, look at the proposed transportation study guide, which is being proposed to you to adopt. Look at the maps of Appendix C of the transportation study guide. These will not just allow, but will encourage thousands of acres with industrial, commercial, and residential sprawl in the backcountry. This is exactly what UCSD is telling us we must not do. We must say yes to the regional decarbonization framework, move forward on it, but you, the Board of Supervisors, must not adopt what is being proposed to you in the transportation study guide. Please, board members, please do what you must do and read again the UCSD study and look at the maps of Appendix C of the transportation study guide. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Hi, my name is Katie Christ, and I'm a public health researcher at UCSD and a member of the Public Health Advisory Council of the Climate Action Campaign. And I'm calling to support the decarbonization framework and thank the board for taking this critical step. Much of my research is focused on improving the health and well-being of older adults living in San Diego. And our research has found that African American and Hispanic older adults have levels of chronic disease that are on par with those a decade older who live in higher income communities. And these disparities are due in part to a lifetime of having to breathe forced air and having fewer safe spaces to be physically active. So we must place equity at the forefront of efforts to build a future that's not dependent on fossil fuels by ensuring that we have the infrastructure, the policies, and the programs in place to encourage transit and walking and biking as alternatives to car trips and electrifying our buildings. I look forward to seeing the development of a strong implementation plan with concrete and measurable metrics of all the steps needed to get us to a zero carbon future on the timeline required. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Good morning, Supervisors. My name is Dee Miller, and I represent San Diego 350. We support the RDF and thank the staff and all who were involved in crafting it. However, implementation and accountability are crucial to its success. The Regional Decarbonization Framework produces a range of policies to reduce and eliminate emissions, but implementation and accountability are crucial to its success. We've seen that policy proposals alone cannot achieve decarbonization. We support the staff plan to develop, a detailed implementation for the RDF, including specific measures, timelines, and defined metrics for success, as well as the plans for community engagement and the creation of a regional equity group. Also, it is crucial that the county evaluate all upcoming issues to ensure that any decision aligns with and supports the regional decarbonization framework targets. This is especially crucial regarding the upcoming discussion regarding sprawl development in the unincorporated county. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Angie Neeson with the San Diego Public Health Advisory Council for Climate Action Campaign. I'm a family and culinary medicine physician. I'm also part of the minority of physicians representing the mere 2% of Latina physicians across the country. So today I'm speaking on behalf of my patients and my community who are always underrepresented when public health decisions are made. I am in support of the county's regional decarbonization framework, and I look forward to helping connect climate and health equity to provide eco-solutions. I just gave a talk to young physicians last week, recognizing that the best type of doctoring happens when we center health equity and then build from there. I learned early on in my career that malnutrition, obesity, food deserts, and green space inequity was going to make my job so much harder. In fact, 7 out of the 10 top chronic conditions in the U.S. would improve with sustainable food systems, walkable spaces, and clean air. In order to help my patients achieve health behaviors we discuss in the office, the healthy choice has to be the easy choice. The drafted RDF plan is in alignment with climate science and public health. This robust implementation plan centers frontline communities of concern and displaced fossil fuel workers, ensuring that no community is left behind. This is a necessary transition, and I look forward to seeing it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Good morning. My name is John Bodorf with CleanEarthForKids.org. We support the county's work on the decarbonization framework. The transition goal of 2045 is far too late. Please set the goal to 2030. The county must move very quickly. There is no time to waste. The global heat wave and drought with rivers drying up while 1/3 of Pakistan is flooded must be a wake-up call to immediate action. There is no time to delay. The burning of fossil fuels is destroying our planet in front of us. Clean, renewable energy right now is ready to power our county and state and the world. Please look at the work of Mark C. Jacobson from Stanford. Reject nuclear and carbon capture. Neither is needed or necessary, and both are a waste of time, money, and resources. Please move forward with a modified version of Scenario 9 with distributed energy using solar, wind, battery, microgrid systems throughout the county. Distributed energy resources will make local energy available to all renters, reduce energy costs, and also provide a very high level of protection from brownouts and blackouts. Imagine microgrids on every library, school, county building, and hospital. We don't need industrial-scale energy projects. Full building electrification with no exceptions must be done very quickly, along with the installation of heat pumps, increasing building energy efficiency, and more EV charging stations. All of this will create a lot of high-paying jobs for building trades for years and years to come. CleanEarthForKids.org believes natural solutions are key to reducing greenhouse gases while protecting air, water, and land and our precious ecosystems from pollution. We need more trees to absorb carbon while providing needed shade and cooling to our frontline communities. We believe healthy soils must be a top priority, and that means moving quickly away from toxic pesticides and fertilizer. A non-toxic integrated pest management program that does not allow synthetic pesticides or fertilizers must be part of the plan, with incentives and programs to educate and encourage farmers to use chemical-free methods for pest control. Healthy soil is very important to sequestering carbon.
Thank you. Your time is up. We'll go to the next caller.
Good morning, Kathleen Lippett here. As an environmental protection advocate, I wanted to address concerns of the county's failure to create a growing ordinance with strong regulations that will prevent hemp cultivation that is violating the 2018 Farm Bill requirement that hemp grows are limited to 0.3% THC. UC border officials have requested cannabis analyzers to detect cannabinoid profiles and distinguish marijuana from hemp. That would be a great value to provide to the county's hemp permitting agency, which was established to provide permits and prevent unpermitted grows. But without county-provided public information, the public can hardly be expected to recognize a permitted versus an unpermitted grow, and it's a complaint-driven process. The county's agency reports it has no idea how many unpermitted grows there may be. Perhaps a prominent sign with a grower's ID number and a number to report concerns could be required. The dilemma is twofold. The process is complaint-driven, where only the Sheriff's Department has jurisdiction over unpermitted grows, and the county has failed to create a growing ordinance to specify which chemicals, pesticides, and herbicides are allowed and which would be prohibited in order to protect watersheds, plants, and animals. Please provide the Sheriff's Department, as well as the county's hemp permitting agency, the analyzers that could help them properly oversee permitted versus unpermitted hemp cultivation. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Hi, good morning. Bea Alvarez with the Carbon Sink Farms Food Shed and a member of the San Diego Green New Deal Alliance. First, I wanted to say thank you to the Decarbonization Framework team, to the Board of Supervisors, and those elevating our local food system as a higher priority in our county climate action plan. Carbon farming offers the most cost-effective and natural strategy for reducing carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, as well as the critical co-benefits of improving our local food system and strengthening our economy. It's exciting to see San Diego leading the path in creating policy and investing in our local food system as a key sector in the fight against climate change by making carbon farming a central strategy. Our farmers can help mitigate our significant carbon footprint and get us to net zero faster, while simultaneously producing the healthiest fresh food imaginable. We welcome the actions the county can take to incentivize and support these practices. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Hello, my name is Steve Geld. I'm with San Diego 350. And as like many other speakers so far, I think the RDF is a significant achievement. And I commend the supervisors for their vision in commissioning it and everyone who has worked on it. It recognizes the danger we're marching toward, and it also recognizes the unprecedented level of collaboration that we need to address the crisis. Yesterday, we learned that part of the Greenland ice shelf is irreversibly melting, and this will raise sea levels 11 inches. As another speaker mentioned, Pakistan is currently underwater, and the largest town in Mississippi has no usable water. And yet the level of alarm among most citizens and elected officials that the danger before us warrants is missing. Even our local newspaper, the Union Tribune, placed the news about the melting ice shelf on page 11. So the creation of the RDF is less challenging than the problem of implementing it in an environment in which so many stakeholders believe that we can continue with business as usual and make only small tweaks to our lifestyle. Demands for highway expansion and sprawl development continue. The RDF can't succeed unless there is a significant outreach and education program to raise awareness among citizens and elected officials of the magnitude of what we're facing, and also the immensity and the sacrifice that's required in what needs to be done. So I call on the supervisors to make a commitment to campaign to educate and raise the alarm as an implementation priority in implementing the RDF. The community must be mobilized to get behind the RDF if it is to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Good morning. My name is Rebecca Falk. I'm the chairperson of the Borrego Springs Community Sponsor Group. Speaking for myself, because I haven't had a chance to bring the technical report to my group yet, and I'm working on that. I did want to talk about the section of the technical report that's on decarbonizing electricity. But I first want to say I'm very grateful to this board for taking climate change seriously and really tackling it. And I'm also very proud that you're doing that. Given what's happening all across the country, it just makes me proud that this particular board is taking this seriously in the county in which I live. I do want to say, though, that when I looked at the scenarios for decarbonizing electricity, I know they're just showing what capacity is at this point, but living in Borrego Springs, it was pretty frightening to look at all of the concentration of potential sightings in Borrego Springs. We are at zero carbon in our community because of our two existing solar farms, which use up all the capacity on our existing electrical lines. And of course, I'm sure you all know that we're embedded within the Anza-Borrego Desert State Park, and the beauty and the livability of Borrego Springs is incredibly important to us. So I wanted to urge you, like a previous caller did, to really look at scenario 9, which is focused on rooftop solar and has some other projects in, I think, in tandem with Imperial County. And to really look at that, and even though it falls short by 12%, perhaps there are ways to make that up now, and perhaps there are new technologies coming on, which I did talk about that with Murtaza, and he thought that would be the case.
Thank you. Your time is up. We'll go to the next caller.
Consuelo. So I'm wondering, does the UN ever speak or acknowledge the chemtrails that are being sprayed in the sky? Chemtrails, contrails, whatever you want to believe they are. Condensation disappears, chemicals stay and linger in the stratosphere. That's not a conspiracy. All you have to do is look up. I'm all for planting trees and cleaning the soil. Yes, let's do that. Let's also address the 5G radiation that's actually killing these trees and other plants and is seriously affecting humans and other animals on the planet. I laugh at the fact that they think they're fixing things by having electric cars when it's mostly coal being used to charge these cars. That is the epitome of how government works. That is government in a nutshell. You better recognize fast that they're cooking us all slowly. Remember, you are the carbon they are trying to eliminate. The earth will take care of herself. She always has. It's the stupid human political leaders and the elite that get in the way of it all. They know exactly what they're doing. Humans continue to mess things up, thinking they are helping. Know your place. Stay in your lane, stupid, greedy humans. Government is never going to fix things. Wake up, slaves. The greatest trick ever played was to have us search externally for our savior when we are here to save ourselves. Enough seeking for politicians to save us or to save the environment. It's up to us. We've always had the power. They just continue to keep us from it with everything imaginable, from medication to 5G to television to spraying the skies, all designed to keep you little and from knowing your own power. All these poor, disillusioned callers and speakers actually believe government will help. Fat chance. Wake up and smell the propaganda. Agenda 2030 and the New World Order is around the corner.
Your time is up. We'll go to the next caller.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm Melanie Woods with the California Apartment Association. We represent 50,000 housing providers across the state, 2/3 of which are mom and pop. We appreciate the progress that's being made on the regional decarbonization framework and the immense amount of work that has gone into the technical report and corresponding outreach. We understand the focus on communities of concern and low-income residents, as these individuals may experience the greatest hardship as gas costs begin to rise. We appreciate the focus on space and water heating, where the largest benefit can be realized from electrification. We hope you continue with the approach of incentives and rebates to incentivize electrification in rental housing. End-of-life equipment replacement will still be very costly to implement. Mandated systems upgrades during renovation could slow investment in our rental housing stock. The California Apartment Association today is here as a partner, and we look forward to being part of the stakeholder conversations as the technical findings presented today turn into implementable actions. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Truth. March of the 350 minions. Those are most of the socialist stakeholders you've been hearing. The item talks about a regional climate action plan. Just like from the November 17th, 2021 meeting, quote, our structure brings together unelected regional governments and an evolving governance structure and encourages collective experimentation for decarbonization, end quote. Here's how decarbonization will affect the workforce. For the March 16th meeting, quote, the transition to a carbon neutral economy may exacerbate wage inequality and disparities by race and gender. Green jobs are not necessarily good jobs. Displaced workers and lower wage jobs, end quote. Women in particular will suffer greatly under this plan. Inclusive economics suggests that former oil workers become Lithium Valley miners. Here's how green lithium mining is. From the November 17th, 2021 meeting, quote, some of the environmental considerations, releasing lithium into the atmosphere, ecosystem damage, and the lack of recycling of lithium batteries, end quote. According to the August 18th San Diego Fire Rescue Battalion Chief meeting, quote, from January 1st to May 3rd in New York, there were 60 residential fires due to lithium batteries, up 233%. On June 12th, a Tesla in a wrecking yard for 3 weeks reignited into flames by itself. Batteries may release their energy and gases long after fire is extinguished. Rekindle is likely and can occur up to 21 days later. Lots of water is required for outing a lithium fire, end quote. No one in this chamber can dare say they care about jobs, fire threats, or the environment if they support this toxic decarbonization framework. Liars.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Shafali Sharma. Hi, good morning. My name is Shafali Sharma, and I'm a volunteer at San Diego 350 Student Cell Committee and a student of SDSU, as well as a volunteer for a global organization called Conscious Planet. I wanted to provide some background information to emphasize why carbon farming is so crucial and necessary. Currently, our soil is dying, with a statistic from the UN stating that 90% of Earth's soils could be degraded by 2050, which is less than 30 years, which will lead to global food crises as our population is predicted to be well over 9 billion by 2050. In fact, according to the climate portal by MIT, our degraded soils have released 110 billion metric tons of carbon so far. And 50 to 70% of carbon stored in farm soils has already been lost as of 2019, according to the UN environment. This is because we are losing organic content in our soils, causing them to be degraded. And therefore, it's important to increase the organic content in soil to a minimum of 3 to 6% through carbon farming, because healthy soils are one of the largest carbon sinks on the planet, whereas degraded soils have been a contributing factor to climate change as well as nutritional deficiencies, where like 3.2 billion people negatively impacted by degraded soils. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you to all the callers and everyone who has participated in the efforts. This is obviously an ongoing endeavor, and really appreciate my colleagues who initiated this effort and all the work that's being done. You know, to make clear, collaboration is the key. As a county, we do not have land use authority in 18 jurisdictions, nor do we have exclusive control over issues of ports and airports and other things. And so getting everyone together and getting everyone to move forward together is a really vital effort. I think the convening is good, though, and I think the discussions and efforts and trying to identify pilot projects, things that can be done, providing technical assistance, all of this is incredibly good. And, you know, I just want to reiterate one point. We're all aware we've got to tackle the issues of climate change. You see the horrific flooding you're seeing in Pakistan. You see the intense drought, heat, lightning strikes. We spent a good chunk of time yesterday on emergency response and changing nature of wildfires because the threat is much different than it's ever been before. You can see it in water levels, in Sierra snowpack, in lakes and reservoirs. We have to take action. We also have to acknowledge that the fossil fuel industry, which played a leading role in driving these emissions and creating this environment, simultaneously did significant damage to our planet while providing a lot of really good jobs. And those are jobs that people depend on, and their families depend on them, and their ability to have their kids have a better life and buy a home and retire with dignity. And we cannot simultaneously try and save the planet and destroy the middle class. We have to figure out how we do both of those things. We also spend a lot of time on this board addressing issues that at their root are about poverty and people not being paid enough. We talk about the issues of homelessness. You have a lot of people who work full-time who don't have a place to live because they can't afford it because their job is of such low wage and low value that they can't do that, and we end up having to step in and subsidize that. We have a real problem with seniors becoming homeless on our streets. There's not a single retired pipe fitter with a pension that we're having to find on the streets and give them a place to live because they have a pension, they have the ability to do this. And so it is vitally important, and I appreciate the work, and I know we're doing it. It is vitally important as we figure out this transition that we tackle the issues of an environmental transition and make sure the economic transition goes side by side, because you absolutely can do both. And I think in the early days of renewable energy, there was not the intentionality in doing that. I think had that happened 20 years ago when that started, making sure that any job that was displaced here for a job here was a job of equal value, a good union job, we'd be having a much easier conversation. But now we got to have those conversations now. And we've got to move forward and do those. And so just want to reiterate as we do that, the urgency we feel to tackle issues of climate is real. The urgency we feel to tackle issues of good jobs is also real, and we have to figure out how we can do both of them. So really appreciate all the work that's going in. It feels like we're kind of getting there. We're kind of moving in that direction. We're coming to that understanding, and that will really strengthen us as a community as we move forward. With that, let me go to Supervisor Desmond.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. Appreciate the update and the conversation. Also appreciate Councilmember Contreras from Vista for bringing up that Buena Creek area. That is our one rail transit stop in the unincorporated area, and I know we've already tasked our planning departments to come up with some better road and access and alignments there so that it can be utilized. And because it's just the infrastructure costs there are exorbitant, and that area has not been able to develop. So hopefully we'll get ahead of that. Hopefully, Councilmember Contreras, you will come down here when we go fighting for money for the construction of those roads, and because that's going to be the next hurdle on that. So appreciate that. And, you know, I'm all for cleaning up our air and our greenhouse gas emissions. And as long as, you know, we approach it in a fair and balanced way, and Supervisor Fletcher, you pointed out there's many balances and there are many balls in the air when we're trying to deal with this. But infrastructure is also very, very important. We don't have enough electricity even today. We're not even producing enough, you know, if every car went to electric. We don't have the infrastructure to charge that at this point in time. And I know everybody wants to go green and everybody wants, you know, with the solar and wind and those types of things. I don't know that there's going to be enough solar and wind to produce all that electricity. So we have to, you know, go with this with open eyes to know that infrastructure is going to be very, very important, and particularly with electricity, as one of the speakers pointed out. So, and we can't lose sight of the other pressing needs like housing affordability, job growth, and here locally, local food production and our agriculture. I'm glad to see we worked up efforts in talking with our ag community, with the Farm Bureau on these efforts. And we talk about trees. We always talk about, well, we got to plant more trees, which is good. I like trees, and I think we need more of them. Everybody likes shade, but what we also forget is in our agriculture area, where a lot of our land, and I know nobody wants to develop it or pave it or anything like that, but a lot of our, we have a lot of shrubbery and things like that out in the unincorporated area that have turned into crops and plants. Could sequester a lot of more carbon than currently being done by some of the sage that's out there. And I don't want to plow under all the sage and things like that, but we got to live in a balance. And I would like to see that through this decarbonization that we realize we've got people out there in the agriculture business that are growing plants, growing crops, and that helps eat up some of the carbon in the air, and they deserve some of their credit in their work and efforts in decarbonization as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor. One other point on agriculture is just worth mentioning. We're going to eat. I mean, everyone's going to eat. So if you grow that stuff local, right, then there's less carbon emissions to transport it to where it goes. So you get some economic benefit and some environmental benefit. If we don't grow it local, then we're going to grow it somewhere else and ship it here. And I think that's an important thing to take into account when we look at agriculture. Supervisor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. I want to thank staff for their presentation. It was outstanding. We do have landfills and other places that are going to be producing methane and other gases, and we're going to have to deal with that no matter what. And I think that looking at biomass facilities, looking at waste to energy, I think still needs to be in this framework and perhaps dug in a little deeper, because we're going to be saddled with it no matter what. We might as well get some positive out of it. And then the second part is almost everything I've looked at, we talk about planting trees and that's all terrific. And then here we are in the midst of a huge drought. And when I was a younger man, I was told that every foot of tree is a gallon of water per day. And when we talk about all the plants, all the things, there's all sorts of new technology. I know that we looked at some of it, and that's harvesting water from air in Africa and other arid areas. They've had tremendous success in deserts, collecting an enormous amount of water out of the air through these micro fibers. And so I'd like to continue to see that, because I think that as we think in terms, when we think in terms of trees, in food, and all the good things that they produce, we've got to be more and more independent with our water source. So with that, thank you.
All right, we've got a motion by Vice Chair Vargas. I'm happy to second. Appreciate all the work. Ask the clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Supervisor Anderson.
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond.
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas. Chair Fletcher.
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present voting aye.
We're going to continue this discussion on item 6, advancement of sustainability initiatives for county facilities and operations in the unincorporated area as a part of the regional decarbonization framework and climate plan update. We will give staff a chance to get reset, and then we will turn it over to them for a presentation.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and members of the board. I'm Davia Lynch, and I'm joined by Kelly Bray of Planning and Development Services and Charlie Marchesano from the Department of General Services. Today, we are here to discuss 6 items that will form the foundation of the county's Climate Action Plan update measures and support the implementation of the Regional Decarbonization Framework. Today's action includes an update on one plan and a request to direct staff to develop 2 programs and prepare 3 reports that can provide a foundation for the new Climate Action Plan measures, which can be implemented with the completion of the Climate Action Plan update and its associated environmental report in spring of 2024. As the previous presentation shared, the board directed the preparation of the Regional Decarbonization Framework, or RDF, to provide a roadmap for the San Diego region to achieve a zero carbon emissions future. The board also directed staff to prepare an update to the county's Climate Action Plan, or CAP, with the goal of achieving net zero emissions. There's quite a bit of overlap between the RDF and the CAP update. However, the RDF, as its name indicates, is regional in scope, whereas the CAP update is focused only on the unincorporated county and county facilities. RDF provides guidance for what local jurisdictions can do to decarbonize, while the CAP update is an example of how the RDF can be implemented at the municipal level for the unincorporated county. At the direction of this board, the county has already achieved greenhouse gas reductions in various sectors, including those in the RDF. This slide shows a summary of ongoing sustainability efforts with highlights of the most relevant achievements through 2021 that align with each of the 5 sectors of the RDF. Within the electrical grid, the county joins San Diego County Community Power, which will provide 100% renewable electricity by 2035 to unincorporated area residents. The county continues to install solar panels and batteries at county facilities and is incentivizing solar installation at homes. Within the transportation network, the county developed the electric vehicle roadmap, which has led to an increase in county-owned electric vehicles and charging facilities, and is guiding where to prioritize additional chargers in the community. With regard to buildings, the county provides energy incentives and improvements for the community and has prepared the Strategic Energy Plan and Zero Net Energy Portfolio Plan to reduce energy consumption and increase energy efficiency at county facilities. When it comes to natural climate solutions, the county is conserving open space through the Multiple Species Conservation Program, planting trees and completing water conservation projects. And finally, within the food systems and circular economy decarbonization sector, the county manages organic waste through contracts with waste haulers, is making compost easier in the unincorporated area through the Organic Materials Ordinance, also on today's agenda, and preserves local agriculture through the Purchase of Agricultural Conservation Easements program. Staff anticipate presenting the RDF to the board for adoption in spring 2023 and the CAP update in 2024. However, impacts from climate change continue to intensify, and the board can take additional action now to advance new initiatives that will both support the RDF and the CAP update and ultimately get us closer to reducing greenhouse gas emissions more quickly. Today, we will present 6 items to the board. These rose to the top as part of the CAP update process. They are a mix of efforts that have robust stakeholder support and will resolve current data gaps while forming the foundation for new initiatives, pilot programs, and incentives for the board to consider in the CAP update and in future operational plans. This includes a plan, 2 reports, and 3 programs. Each of the proposed items today will advance sustainability initiatives in support of the CAP update and RDF. The facility's zero carbon portfolio plan will support the CAP update. However, if the other actions proposed today were not to proceed, the 3 reports and 2 programs described today would be developed following the adoption of the CAP update as the first steps in implementing anticipated CAP measures. After these reports and programs were completed, then measures to reduce greenhouse gas emissions would be completed and implemented. Instead, with approval of today's action, the planning associated with these reports and programs would be completed prior to CAP adoption and incorporated as specific actions in the CAP. This allows for faster implementation of the CAP update and achievement of greenhouse gas reductions sooner. Additionally, by incorporating these efforts into the CAP update, Activities that require an analysis under the California Environmental Quality Act will be included in the CAP Update Environmental Impact Report that is already underway, reducing the amount of time and cost to fully analyze each action independently. Charlie Marchesano with DGS will now provide an update on the zero carbon portfolio plan.
Thank you, Davia. Over the next few slides, I will walk you through the county's plan for cutting carbon emissions generated by our facilities. This update is also being provided to respond to your board's request back in April of this year for staff to demonstrate how we can increase renewables content and energy procured for county operations and to ensure alignment with the regional decarbonization effort. The Zero Carbon Portfolio Plan addresses both these requests. It is important to note that county operations has been focused on sustainability in our buildings for a long time, starting with the Strategic Energy Plan, and then in 2017 with our Zero Net Energy Portfolio Plan, which aligned county facilities efforts with state goals to cut 50% of non-renewable energy use by 2030. As a result of implementing these plans, we have been able to cut non-renewable energy use from all county facilities by 23%. Now we are taking the next step with the Zero Carbon Portfolio Plan. This new Zero Carbon Plan sets a lofty goal of a 90% reduction in county facilities' greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. Meeting this goal will be similar to removing more than 20,000 gas vehicles from our roads for an entire year. This plan has been developed in coordination with the regional decarbonization effort and our interdepartmental sustainability roundtable, and the measures I'm about to present will feed into the upcoming CAP update. This plan continues efforts from the past that have had great success and adds new measures that are key for the future. All told, there are 6 measures which are now carbon-focused instead of energy-focused. Green energy supply is the key measure that guides this plan. Using our direct access contracts, we will ramp up operations grid power to be 100% renewable by 2030. For sites that are not on direct access, we will use the local CCAs to accomplish this. This effort aligns with prior board direction related to the unincorporated area achieving the same goal by joining San Diego Community Power. The next measure is to electrify or remove natural gas from our county buildings. This effort becomes key when you have a renewable source electricity grid. We will focus on our larger sites to accomplish this measure, which involves challenging work to replace gas equipment with electric equipment. Lessons learned as we take on this work will be shared with our partners on the regional decarbonization effort. This item will require significant investment, which I will detail a little later. Next, we will continue our energy efficiency efforts, which include projects like lighting retrofits and mechanical upgrades at existing buildings. This has been highly successful for many years and resulted not only in energy savings, but significant cost savings. Proactive energy monitoring is a measure that we currently perform, and it will continue. This involves closely tracking the performance of our facilities so that we can maintain the cost, energy, and carbon savings we achieve over time and correct issues quickly as they arise. Next, we will continue to build our new facilities to be net zero, meaning they will be highly efficient, all-electric buildings that also generate as much renewable power as they use when measured over a year. Currently, we have 7 zero net energy facilities in operation, with several more under construction. And lastly, we will continue to pursue renewables projects at our existing facilities. Most of our larger sites already have solar arrays. However, we will continue to add to our on-site solar and battery portfolio where it is feasible. This last slide breaks out the investment needed for these efforts over time. Fortunately, we already have dedicated funding of $2 million a year to implement this plan. Starting in fiscal year 23-24, additional funding will be needed, totaling roughly $51 million for the entire term of this plan, which extends into fiscal year 30-31. For the most part, this additional investment is needed to cover the cost of removing natural gas from our existing buildings. County staff are working to secure this funding through the county's budget process, so we are not seeking approval for any funding today. We will return to your board at a later date if that changes. This concludes the update on the Zero Carbon Portfolio Plan, and now I'll turn it over to Kelly Bray to continue the presentation.
Now we will describe the items associated with community-based efforts. The first item is an equity-driven tree planting program that will improve community health and well-being through tree planting. This aligns with the natural climate solutions sector of the RDF. The program will build upon existing county tree planting initiatives by identifying priority areas with a focus on underserved areas and develop steps to increase the overall tree canopy coverage in unincorporated communities. This will result in a reduction of urban heat island impacts and energy consumption in these communities. The second item is a pilot carbon farming program. Carbon farming refers to a variety of different farming techniques that increase the rate at which carbon is pulled out of the air and into soil and plants. For example, the application of compost improves soil health, thereby expanding the amount of carbon the soil holds. This aligns with the natural climate solutions and food system and circular economies sectors of the RDF. The goal is to understand existing efforts, identify what incentives will be most beneficial to the agricultural community, and create a suite of tools to help with implementation of carbon farming plans and projects. Unlike the other actions presented today, which just reduce the amount of emissions being produced, carbon farming is unique in its ability to sequester carbon, which is necessary since we know we will continue to produce emissions for the foreseeable future. We look forward to continuing to work with stakeholders such as the Farm Bureau on developing this program. The third item is an energy resiliency and equity report that will result in the analysis of community-level energy infrastructure. This aligns with the electrical grid sector of the RDF. The report will identify community vulnerabilities due to heat impacts, power safety, public power safety shutoffs, and utility costs, and result in recommendations for new programs and/or incentives to strengthen critical infrastructure. Specifically, this report will focus on vulnerabilities in underserved communities such as those who are low income or renters who have less control over their housing. The fourth item is an existing building electrification options report to identify energy sources, needs, and consumption patterns in existing buildings throughout the unincorporated area. This aligns with the building sector of the RDF. The report will study the current fuel use patterns such as renewable and non-renewable, the use of propane, natural gas, and electrical energy options. The report will also look at the needs of existing residential, commercial, and industrial buildings and evaluate the costs and benefits of options such as rebates or incentives to influence the conversion of gas-powered equipment and appliances to electric options. The fifth and final item is a hydrogen fueling stations report to identify future hydrogen fueling infrastructure needs and locations to service medium and heavy-duty vehicles like trucks and buses. This aligns with the transportation network sector of the RDF. This report will have two main components. First, analyzing current and future hydrogen fueling needs, and second, identifying potential locations for hydrogen fueling stations. This effort will support existing clean transportation initiatives, including the county's electric vehicle roadmap and the Accelerate to Zero Emissions regional collaboration, which also evaluated hydrogen demand at a regional level. As noted, today's request is to receive the update on the county facility's zero carbon portfolio plan and provide direction to proceed with the development of the 2 programs and 3 reports. The board can provide input and direction to proceed with any or all of the items. Today's actions will advance sustainability initiatives in support of the CAP update and the RDF. All actions help close existing knowledge gaps and/or known data needs. By closing these gaps ahead of the RDF and CAP update, the county will be at an advantage to move quickly and effectively implementing actions to achieve real GHG reduction in the unincorporated area at the time of CAP adoption. Staff have anticipated the consultant costs if the items are approved, and funding is not being requested of the board today. Thank you, and that concludes our presentation, and we are available for questions.
Thank you. I know we'll have some board member comments and questions, but why don't we hear from our public speakers first?
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 20 total requests to speak, 9 individuals in person, and 11 requesting to speak by phone. I'd also like to note for the record, we did receive 7 e-comments on this item. All 7 were in favor. For any of the members of the public that have requested to speak on this item by phone, if you could please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We will begin with the in-person speakers. Those in favor of this item, as your name is called, if you could please come down and stand against the east wall under the murals. It is until it is your turn to speak. I will be calling individuals in groups of 5. Nicole Moulter, Karina Contreras, Gloria Canoa, May Mittis, Christina Marquez, and Joel Kramer. And you can proceed in any order.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Nicola Moulter, and in addition to being a concerned citizen, I represent San Diego 350's Food and Soil Committee. And we strongly support the pilot program to incentivize adoption of carbon farming and ranching practices as part of a primary measure in the CAP revision. I have researched the potential of carbon farming and regenerative agricultural practices over the past 5 years intensively, and I am in the process of converting my own farm to regenerative practices, which follows a biological and ecosystem approach to farming rather than a chemical and a mechanical approach. These practices are a win-win for everyone, except maybe the chemical companies. Around the world, these practices have been demonstrated to have a significant economic, health, and environmental benefits, including very, very cost-effective sequestering of atmospheric carbon at scale, which I've never seen any other solution do that. Increasing farmer and rancher profits by reducing labor, equipment, and input costs, and reducing crop and livestock losses due to disease and pests. Increasing our water infiltration and retention that provides resiliency against floods and droughts, reducing the need for irrigation, and restoring biodiversity through habitat restoration and reduced toxic chemical use, building soil and reversing the loss of our arable land that's happening at an unprecedented rate, and finally reducing air and water pollution from chemical runoff and emissions. So thank you very, very much for your leadership on the climate change and for your support on the carbon farming pilot program. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Karina Contreras, and I'm here in my capacity as council member for the City of Vista District 1. And I'm really thankful for all this conversation that we're having because, you know, it's communities like Vista that are heavily impacted by the climate crisis. But, you know, if we really want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, it is imperative that we fund active transportation to a higher extent than we have. For constituents of mine to have to wait, you know, an hour just to go across town is not okay. For the inland rail trail to be partially done, but 100% barren, right? Where it's people, when they want to utilize this, are going to be under the hot sun. It needs to change. So a focus on creating better connection between our different jurisdictions and throughout the region is extremely important, but also making sure that those transportation corridors are shaded so that way people want to utilize and can utilize safely these different active transportation ways to connect to work, to home, to grocery stores. And, you know, putting more bike lanes is great, but we need protected bike lanes. You know, with the amount of fatalities that we see for those who are cycling, if these were homicides, we'd be having a different public safety conversation. This is public safety. We need to invest to ensure that people can move about in a safe manner. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak on these important conversations.
Next. Yeah, thank you.
Hi,
Gloria here. Took the 1 hour MTS from my beautiful Escondido, and I'm here advocating as a lifelong resident for the preservation of my North County. Have y'all watched Avatar: The Last Airbender? The 4 elements become unbalanced with humans gifted with their powers. Analysis, we can try to control earth, land, water, and air, but the elements will fight back. And with fire, it has some tamers, no masters, but fire has the power to consume all life. Alternatively, referencing the people, the Sun Chicanos, fire has the power to bring life, moreover restore balance. I live in an environmental justice community in central southwest Escondido. Many folks in my Latinx community live in EJs. They face issues like lacking access to healthy food, experience extreme heat, fire risk, lack of shade, lack of access to clean water because we get all the cars moving through certain areas, and consistent housing, safe places to recreate, etc. These are public health and safety issues from Palma Valley, Vista, San Marcos, Oceanside, and Fallbrook. I can't emphasize enough that not everyone can afford to go electric, volunteer to plant native plants, which are more fire resistant and use less water. Small businesses and farms need support in the transition. Impacted communities should be compensated for their labor in protecting our home's natural resources, specifically low-income bilingual Spanish-speaking stewards. Economic justice, investment, and development is necessary. Young professionals urge the county to allocate resources for local organizations to create local jobs for impacted communities, and one idea is to use these resources to remove invasive plants and insert native plants, like in Hawaii, create tree shade. Community-led gardens are amongst those solutions. Vista just lost actually a grocery store in one of those communities, which is exacerbating food insecurity. We'd love to continue working for free, but it doesn't pay the bills for struggling families who want to stay rooted. Economic justice is key, and I look forward to collaborating for more resources to protect our area's natural beauty that we North County stewards take immense pride in. Thank you again.
Good morning, Supervisors. Christina Marquez speaking on behalf of IBEW Local 569 and its 3,500 members. The climate crisis is real, and we must keep moving forward with the CAP to put a plan and measures in place and to follow through with them to lower our greenhouse gas emissions. Getting to zero carbon can create good union jobs if done right by requiring licensed C10 contractors and electricians with proper certifications and training for the green renewable projects. This includes solar, wind, geothermal, EV charging stations with the requirement of electric vehicle infrastructure training program or EVITP certifications for the electricians, and microgrids or battery energy storage systems, BESS. Also included are long-term high-road, high-wage green careers like building and manufacturing and maintaining energy storage systems. Hundreds of our members are currently constructing battery energy storage systems as we speak, and all these green career opportunities are much needed and desired by the community. Many of the skills required to work with green energy technologies are skills IBEW electricians have trained on for years. Together, paired with regional decarbonization framework and the county climate action plan, there must be an action plan on job creation, prioritize green energy jobs, local renewable energy, and just transition workforce. We look forward to working with you on the climate action plan, and thank you to staff for all of your hard work.
Thank you. And as the next public speakers come into the podium, I'd like to invite down Joe Gabaldon and recall May Meadus.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. My name is Joel Kramer. I'm an agricultural specialist at the Resource Conservation District of Greater San Diego County. Firstly, I just want to thank the supervisors and the staff for showing your support for agriculture. I'm here to talk about the carbon farming program, but I know that yesterday you approved the livestock pass, and we know that how important agriculture is in addressing this issue, partly because it's a unique opportunity to sequester carbon while adapting the landscape to extreme weather conditions that most of these initiatives aren't able to do. And currently, we operate a carbon farming demonstration plot on county land in the Tijuana River Valley. It's shown that by applying compost regularly, we rapidly sequester carbon in the soil. We also operate 2 other demonstration plots on a ranch and an orchard in the county. Agricultural producers have already taken it on themselves to do these practices, which address climate change, but they need additional support previously the county provided this support through subsidized equipment, subsidized seed, and that type, but it's been reduced. And so the state of California is currently the main source of funding for that. But it's difficult to compete with other regions like the Central Valley, and they have different needs. The main thing that would change this would be to equip producers with the right equipment to put this massive surplus of compost that we're anticipating onto our fields and to adopt other practices. And so we really appreciate you investing in this so that producers can take that on themselves. So thanks so much for having me here today, and I support your work.
Good morning, Honorable Chair Fletcher and members of the Board of Supervisors and staff. It's great to be back in front of you. My name is Joe Gabalden. I'm SDG&E's Public Affairs Manager, speaking on behalf of our 4,500 colleagues and filling in for my colleague Dallin Young. At SDG&E, we recognize the need to address climate change and its impacts, and we share the county's ambitions in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and improving our air quality. We want to be a partner with the county as we proceed down the path toward decarbonization. In late 2020, SDG&E adopted a company-wide sustainability strategy, Building a Better Future, SDG&E's commitment to sustainability. The strategy committed to achieving net zero GHG emissions by 2045 and identified a series of actionable and long-term goals aligned with California's and the county's ambitious climate agenda. Last April, we released an economy-wide GHG study, Path to Net Zero, which provides a roadmap on how to get us all to net zero emissions. The study found that strategies like accelerated electrification and embracing technologies like clean hydrogen will be necessary to achieve our goals. In closing, we recognize the urgency to address climate change and its impacts, and we support California's clean energy goals. We encourage the county to partner with SDG and others in the development of strategies in these areas, as outlined in the staff report. And collectively, we can work together on solutions that will result in meaningful GHG reductions. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Now I'd like to invite forward the two speakers in opposition, Audra and Sean Ellis. You have 2 minutes to address the board, and if you could please begin by stating your name for the record.
Use the name Audra. I just feel like it's a little confusing because you'll say that we're in a drought and then you want to plant trees, or you want to use hydrogen gas, or that you want to protect the environment, but these lithium batteries are toxic, so are the solar panels. These lithium leach fields actually, if a bird touches what's in the lithium, they die just like that. So, I mean, how can it not be toxic? And there's no way to recycle those later. So I don't understand why we're doing this. But you want to, the carbon atomic number is 6. And it has 6 neutrons, 6 protons, and 6 electrons. 666. It's interesting. But there's a problem because it's like HARP actually can do things to the weather and make it so that there are tsunamis or there are things that go on. And we could drill for water in the earth, and like you could collect it from the air as well. So there's an abundance of water, but it's all lies that we're actually in a drought. So it's like you can't say we're in a drought and then say you want to plant trees. You can't say you want to protect the environment and then everything that you're doing to protect the environment is actually destructive to it. It doesn't make sense. It's not feasible. It's not sustainable. I mean, even the World Economic Forum just said that we shouldn't be washing our clothes, that we should, once a month wash our sheets. And your PJs once a week is good. So it's like, I mean, this whole thing is a fiasco. you know, the fact that you want to give people incentives when, if they already put up solar or have a well, they're being taxed for it. So they're actually paying when you said that you would give them incentives.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Sean Ellis. I'm the political organizer for the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Union. We stand against this item, but we are looking forward to working with you guys on solutions to the climate crisis. To electrify all county facilities and county buildings will set a precedent. Let me make it real clear to you guys. I have plumbers right now in this county building piping your facility as we speak. In several other facilities across the county, we are working on your plumbing, your potable water, and your natural gas systems. If you pass this item, you are effectively telling my members as we speak today, you do not care about this job. Electrification will always equal gentrification. And let me explain. San Francisco pushed electrification across their whole region. Their bills have went up. Just yesterday, they were ranked the #1 city in the country for gentrification, and the only Bay City in Northern California that is expecting a decrease in ethnic minority groups and the very groups that we're fighting for. So, that being said, if you electrify, look at the city of Encinitas. I want you to drive through that city right now and show me the diversity. Show me the people that look like me. Show me the Asian Americans like myself who use natural gas to cook. That's the way I show my culture, y'all. I'm a Pacific Islander Asian American. We show our culture through love and our food. To electrify, you take that away from us. Not to mention the good jobs for all the non-union and union pipe tradespeople that are working in your facilities today. It will create tons of jobs for electricians, correct. My sister is absolutely correct, but it will devastate my trade and make us irrelevant like coal miners and so many workers. Do not rush to this electrification item, please. The governor is changing the very way we're going to power these systems up. So like I said, the United Association across the state will never support electrification. Make it very clear, and we'll sing it from the halls. But that being said, we oppose, and we are looking forward to solutions to fighting the climate crisis. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Hi, I'm Mary Matava, avocado grower and president of San Diego County Farm Bureau. And I appreciate Chair Fletcher, you allowing me to speak because apparently I didn't write my name clearly enough. I want to speak in support of the carbon farming initiative that you have. I think this is really important. Sequestration of carbon by trees is one of the most cost-effective ways of achieving goals. In San Diego County, in between the last two crop reports, we lost over 2,500 acres of orchard trees. And these trees have the capability of sequestering about 2 tons of carbon per acre. So the 27,000 trees we have left are sequestering each year without any cost to the county 54,000 tons of carbon. So I really appreciate your staff having worked with Farm Bureau and other stakeholders. It's super important to us to have the ability to input on this issue and making it easier for young farmers to get involved in farming now, I think is going to be really important just from keeping our farming populations up, but also equity in the industry. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We will now hear from those that have requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you'll be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. I'd like to remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking, and we'll begin with our first caller.
My name is Rita Clement, and I am speaking in support of item 6. Good morning, supervisors. My name is Rita Clement, and I live in Chula Vista in Nora Vargas District 1. I am a volunteer with San Diego 350 and the San Diego Building Electrification Coalition. I strongly support item 6. As you know, the solutions to alleviate climate change are here and now. Building desertification is one of the more important solutions available for quick action. Methane is also known as natural gas. If we stop using natural gas for cooking and water heating, will improve the health of children suffering from asthma and adults suffering from COPD. Our community members will be educated and engaged if the information is spread by word of mouth and online. In order to future-proof new buildings and prevent the expansion of dead-end fossil fuel infrastructure, the county must urgently pass an all-electric reach code for new construction, as nearly 60 jurisdictions in California already have. Thank you for taking these actions in item 6.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Hi, Supervisors. This is Madison Coleman with Climate Action Campaign, calling in to support item 6 and urge the board to direct staff to develop the proposed sustainability actions that have been presented today. I want to start off by emphasizing that this is an opportunity for the county to demonstrate a real commitment to climate action, equity, and environmental justice. I'm going to focus my comments on 2 of the proposed actions. First being the equity-driven planning program. Trees play an important role in beautifying our neighborhoods, cooling down our streets, and combating climate change. It is essential that this program identifies and prioritizes developing shade tree canopies in environmental justice communities first, who experience the brunt of the climate crisis and have been historically disinvested in and have been subjected to live on heat islands, which cause heat-related illnesses. Second is the Energy Resiliency and Equity Report, which will result in recommendations that can inform the CAP update development and other future planning efforts, directly affecting the quality of life for those in the region. This report must be developed in consultation with a variety of stakeholders and organizations that represent and are a part of environmental justice communities to ensure that they are not left behind as we transition to a zero-carbon future. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on these actions that will affect the RDF and the CAP, and we look forward to continued collaboration on these critical initiatives.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Hello, this is Serena Pelko with Climate Action Campaign, calling in to support item 6 and urge the county to do everything in its power to electrify all buildings in order to protect our communities from the harmful climate and public health effects of methane gas and by removing fossil fuel infrastructure from the places we live, work, and play. If we're to truly reach the region's emissions reduction goals, electrification efforts for new construction, county facilities, and existing buildings across the region must be taken in parallel with each other. To future-proof new buildings, the city must urgently pass an all-electric reach code for new construction, as nearly 60 jurisdictions in California already have. We also support implementation of the Zero Carbon Portfolio Plan and associated goals to transition existing county facilities to be all-electric. CAC strongly supports the development of the existing building electrification options report and urges the county to set a target date for when all methane gas will be decommissioned in existing buildings across the county. Continued collaboration and engagement with labor leaders to ensure fossil fuel workers have access to high-road jobs as the region pursues decarbonization is critical, and equity must be the foundation for all climate action throughout the county, with environmental justice communities centered and prioritized. Please use the opportunities at hand to prove the county's commitment to being a climate leader by taking these urgent steps towards electrification. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Ronald Asklin, co-leader of SD Sequel, San Diegans for Sustainable, Equitable, and Quiet Equipment in Landscaping. We are a coalition of climate advocacy groups and concerned citizens. I'm speaking in favor of item number 6. Today, I would like to bring your attention to the high levels of nitrous oxides and reactive organic hydrocarbons emitted by small off-road engines, especially the two-stroke engines used in handheld landscaping equipment. These emissions are very harmful to the health of workers and to other members of our community. Nitrous oxide is a potent greenhouse gas that's 300 times more powerful than carbon dioxide. According to CARB, the smog-forming emissions from small off-road engines now exceed the smog-forming emissions from all the passenger cars in California. Our coalition urges San Diego County to take 3 actions as part of their CAP. 1, implement a program to transition county landscaping crews and contractors over to battery-powered lawn maintenance equipment. 2, help secure funding for an equitable trade-in and buyback program to assist sole proprietors and small landscaping businesses make the transition to electric landscaping equipment. Number 3, enact a ban on gas-powered leaf blowers once funds are available for number 2 above. We also urge the county to work with CARB and the San Diego APCD to publicize 2 voucher programs to offset the cost of purchasing zero-emissions landscaping equipment. These programs will be starting later this fall and are especially important for small landscaping companies. The health hazards posed by gas-powered lawn maintenance equipment are an environmental justice issue for workers, for children, and for our most vulnerable populations. Please join us in electrifying landscaping equipment. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and Supervisors. My name is Karina Gonzalez, and I am with Hammond Climate Solutions, and I'm calling in support of this item. I want to take this time to emphasize the importance of electrifying all homes and buildings so that we can not only work to eliminate one of the region's major pollutants, but also protect our communities from the long-term health effects of methane gas. It is time for the county to put the health and safety of our communities first and join the 50-plus cities and jurisdictions across the state who have already passed electrification ordinances and have a plan to phase out natural gas systems from our buildings. We need to rapidly transition away from fossil fuels to clean energy if we have any chance at a livable future. The county has an opportunity to prove itself as a climate leader. However, policies alone will not make the progress we need to see. We need to ensure that this plan is accompanied with an implementation plan that includes specific measures, timelines, and funding mechanisms. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Good morning. My name is David Pearl, and I represent San Diego 350's Food and Soil Committee. We've studied the potential of carbon farming in depth over the last 2 years. Last November, we provided a detailed assessment to the county CAP team, making the case that they should explore a voluntary incentive program that could lead to making carbon farming a new primary measure in the CAP revision. Thus, we are optimistic to see the intention to create a pilot program, and we wish to express San Diego 350's strong support for that. As an environmental group, we are focused on mitigating global warming, but we see increased use of carbon farming in the region as a win in many ways. To name one, creating better soil should make farming safer and more lucrative to reduce need for synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, and water. We think one of the best ways we can address climate change locally is to make it easier to implement carbon farming techniques and build healthy carbon sequestering soil. We hope you share that view and will support this pilot program. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Truth. If the crop's out of season and nobody can afford the VMT mitigation fee, eat what, Nathan? This item mentions conserved land, bike lanes, converted vehicles, reduced energy and water use, and increased renewable energy. We've seen the U.S. Department of Transportation's Complete Streets Plan in effect with the new dangerous, sustainable slime green bike lanes in Mira Mesa, North Park, and Escondido. We've seen 65,000 plus acres of land acquired by county government. And we've seen the promotion of wastewater to be used for drinking water. This item also mentions, quote, evaluating food systems and the circular economy, resources used for as long as possible, end quote. The circular economy is straight from the World Economic Forum. Anyone can go on YouTube and watch A Future Without Waste featuring their crazy agenda contributor, Ida Aachen, talk about the circular economy. She wants us all to rent everything and own nothing, of course. This item also mentions converting all county electricity accounts to 100% renewable energy electricity by 2030. Expensive, dirty, and guaranteed to overwhelm the grid. We also have an equity-driven tree planting program, a racist equity lens for planting trees. Who gets the overpriced trees first? Well, it depends on your skin color. The consultant fee is $50,000, which could be instead used for actually planting the trees. There's also solar EV charging infrastructure for a $100,000 consultant fee for more Potemkin EV chargers, and hydrogen fueling stations for a $100,000 consultant fee. Insert spider webs and tumbleweeds.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
You supervisors.
Consuelo. Good one, Fletcher. Yes, let's grow local instead of importing. But that will never happen because big brother government will make it hard for growers by eventually taxing and limiting growers, and will want entire control of the business of harvest and supply by eventually mandating certain standards, their standards, then penalize the growers for not complying to those set standards. That's how big bully government works. That's how they've always worked. How about planting trees and shrubs that are drought resistant? For example, pomegranate trees are excellent. Things like that are actually beneficial and efficient because it will also contribute to feed the people as well. But that will never happen because government does not work that way. They present the problems they create. Then they will only consider their own idea and plan as the solution, as if the land and planet only belongs to them. The planet belongs to no one, not the government, not to the elite. Humans have to remember this simple fact. Take back your power, people. Stop depending on government. Stop looking to government to save you. They will only keep you down. They only exist because of our dependency and blind allegiance. Government has never worked for the good of humanity. Government does not work. Government likes to create victims and keep people dependent on them by keeping the people divided. Government likes to divide. Government likes to pretend that they care. They pretend to listen to you and your ideas, but it's all just a show. Wake up, wake up, wake up. If you happen to have any great ideas or solutions for the environment and it's beneficial to the land and the people and animals, then you don't need permission from the government to execute those plans. Just do it. Another thing, please stop dividing yourself by titles of Chicanos, Latinos, whatever the hell you continue to perpetuate, whatever the.
Thank you. Your time is up. Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you. We'll go first to Vice Chair Vargas.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that wonderful presentation. I think we need to support all 6 sections on the worksheet, but I do have some questions, mostly because I think first, I want to say that I think we need this type of technical information so we can do the work in a much more strategic way and try to find which are the most efficient options to implement the act. I do want to make sure that I'm supportive of action 1 as presented by staff, but on action number 2, I wanted to ask what the effort is that to do more around underinvested areas, specifically our frontline communities. So I wanted to find out for this program, I want to better understand how the county will target communities that lack tree canopies, and I think it was mentioned by one of our speakers today, because existing or lack of infrastructure right now is a huge impact in some of these areas. So for example, concrete concentrated communities that have made no room to support tree canopies. So how many tree plantings do we estimate annually in this program to support? How can we collaborate with other local cities to identify locations? And then also, I would like for the program to consider where we have reclaimed water pipe or purple pipe can we easily extend it and access, as I think water will also be a key factor in, in ensuring we have more trees. On action number 3, I support the development of a pilot carbon farming program. And again, if there can also be some information analyzing what best practices should be for water use, I would really appreciate that. And then on action number 4, I support it because we need to be advancing all of the critical energy infrastructure solutions that we have in our communities that are most vulnerable to heat impacts. One question though is, shouldn't we also be looking at buildings or home construction when it comes to energy efficiency and insulation? And I'm thinking that some of these buildings might be 20 or 30 or even 50 years old. Shouldn't we also be adding additional more insulation in walls or roofs to make sure that they're more energy efficient? And action number 5, I'm in support of. And then action number 6, I know that we have a huge need for this type of hydrogen filling station, especially to support medium and heavy duty fleets. I know that that services the Port of San Diego and our binational freight is really important for them, for goods movement, not only for our region, but for our state. And I know that we're looking into that, particularly in Otay Mesa, the binational corridor I think is really important for us. So those are some of the thoughts, but I'm happy to make a motion to support all 6, Chair.
Yeah, let's go. Let me ask staff if they have any comments or questions in response to some of the points Vice Chair Vargas raised.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I admit there was a lot in the tree program one, but the pieces I caught in general were equity, the number of trees, the desire to collaborate with other cities, and the purple pipe, right, water use. And I think all of those details are to come. So the purpose of doing this analysis is really understanding what it would take to expand the tree program that we have right now through the Department of Parks and Recreation. So what we're actually looking to do is actually answer those questions, right? How many are the right trees? What types of water, what types of trees, right? Because we want to plant native and drought tolerant where we can. How much water is that going to cost us? Where are the best places for that? The focus on the equity side of it, right, is really understanding where do we have canopy, where don't we have canopy, and how does that overlap with where county have lands. As far as making it a regional program, this is designed to be unincorporated only at this moment, but that doesn't, only because it's going to be fed into the CAP update, right? If it were part of an RDF program, we could consider how to make that more of a region-wide plan. So those are some of the thoughts.
Okay. And then what I'll do is I'll just make sure that the specific questions are sent to the team so that we can address them as we're moving forward. Is that good?
And then as it relates to the regional component as well, I know the RDF team, so those are some of the things that you'll see in spring of next year coming back as recommended actions that we can take as a region for purposes of the tree canopy.
All right, thank you. So that was a motion? All right. Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Thank you so much. I just really want to echo my colleague. I think this is great work. We're moving forward, and these are really good recommendations. I think they're all really solid. I think I definitely support moving them all forward. Actually, would like to offer, if it would be amenable to my colleague, Vice Chair Vargas, to second, but with a friendly amendment to her motion. I think there were some parts of the recommendation 3 that just wanted to not just have the studies come back, but also sort of begin with some pilots. And so I prepared some quick language that just clarifies that we're looking for initial pilots, not just studies, but action. And sent that to Ryan. So if Ryan, you wouldn't mind putting that on the screen, because it was too complicated, too many like little crossouts, and I didn't want to just read this to everyone because last time I did it, that did not go well. Is it up, Brian?
Yes, Supervisor Lawson-Remer, it is up, and everyone can see it.
Okay, great. So I think these are pretty minor. I mean, really just looking at recommendation 3, continuing to move forward in the exact same direction, but moving to the development of options for pilot programs and incentives, and also ensuring that we are aligned with the RDF jobs report, which is of course important. I mean, we want to be aligned with the CAP, but we also want to be aligned with how we're creating good jobs for our region. and acknowledging we absolutely do need to do the studies, but we want to do more than study. We want to act. And that's true on the hydrogen fueling report as well, in terms of actually moving it forward, and the building electrification and the energy resilience and equity report. If it would be amenable to my colleague, I would love to second her motion with a friendly amendment.
Vice Chair? Good. Okay. Done.
Thank you. And thank you again, honestly, to the whole community for all the community feedback. We are moving forward in large part because so many people care so deeply about this, and that process of public participation and everyone's engagement and staff's really diligent work to get feedback is allowing us to move forward. And it's just sort of step by step. I think this is a wonderful step with some great initiatives, and I'm excited to see spring when we're going to have even more.
Thank you. Vice Chair, back to
Yeah,
Vice Chair.
just one more thing I forgot to add, that I just want to make sure for the folks that were here from like the pipe fitters, et cetera, I think it's important to emphasize that we're looking at all of the different models, and I think, Chair, you mentioned it in the other item, that we really are looking at a just transition in terms of workforce and where the different options are. And so this doesn't mean that we're not looking at what opportunities are out there, and that I hear you loud and clear about what the impacts are going to be. And our commitment is to ensure that we have a workforce, especially, a union workforce, that has those opportunities in this new, in us trying to achieve our climate goals. So I just want to emphasize that because I think it's really important, and we hear you loud and clear. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just on that point, just want to echo a little bit of that. As we move forward, we're talking about a pretty significant net increase in jobs to do all of the things that we need to do. And ensuring, again, that individual worker who didn't do anything wrong, they got trained for a job and a skill and a trade, there's got to be ways those folks can keep working. And so I think nothing in here is going to automatically electrify every building. We all know that. We are going to look into a future that's going to be different than the past. Now, as we look into that future, we got to sit down and figure out how it is we move. I'll also note in here, we're also voting for some hydrogen fueling. So just be careful when you oppose everything. You don't want to be on record opposing hydrogen fueling, which we said we never talk about as well. But as we put all these pieces together, right, that's the hard work we got to do. We just figure out as we do, both of these things, how do we move forward? And I think that's a real commitment to our workers who are concerned about what we're doing, that we hear you, we recognize it, we understand it, we don't dismiss it at all. And we're committed to preserving our good, hard-working, working-class jobs and make sure that as there's anything that is different in the future, what's not different is your good jobs and wages and those types of things, because that's vitally important. So I have a quick question for staff on it, and it's fine. I know we got to move forward with it now. I grow weary of consultant after consultant after consultant. I grow very weary of that because a part of what we're trying to do at the county is build the capacity, whereas a county, we can go identify these ideas. We can identify pilot projects. We can do the work and bring it forward. I think we can move faster in doing that. I also think that if we build out our internal capacity, we have individuals who have the history and the knowledge base, and they understand what we're doing, and they understand the region, and so we go forward. So I get we got to go forward, but what would it take for us as a county to be in a position where we could do these things without having to go out and hire a consultant? We could do some research on what would work, we could come up with some ideas, and we could bring the board some pilot projects or things. What would it take? I understand we don't have it today, but what would we need to be in a position to do that?
Chair Fletcher, thank you for the question. As you noted, we could do that. We could look into what it takes. We could work with the Department of Human Resources if directed by the board, take a look at what types of job classifications and new positions would need to be created, what those would need to look like, and what the compensation level would need to be in order to be competitive with the private sector where most of this expertise is currently housed. So we could do that. We could evaluate that, come back to you with costs. And then in terms of a hiring process, the time could range depending on the market. 3 months after we've established those positions would be a very quick turnaround. Could be a year or so, again, depending on how competitive we are in that environment.
Okay. If it's okay with the vice chair and the seconder, I'd like to add that as a recommendation to have you all explore, we need to build some of this internal capacity because, look, these 6 things are not the only 5 things are not the only things we're going to do over the course of the next decade at this county. And as we have folks that are here, they have familiarity with stakeholders, right? They know who to talk to. They know what's happening. They know what's going on. They have a better sense of how it fits. And it's not a, I'm not dragging the folks that we hire from consulting. They've been great. And it's not a criticism of our existing staff. Y'all are doing everything that you possibly can. But we're asking you to do things you never did. And I'd like to figure out how we could build the internal capacity to be able to do that. So let me ask the seconder of the motion if that's okay to add as a recommendation.
It's great. I just want to note, as you look at that, it would be helpful to connect that to our Office of Environmental Justice and Sustainability. It seems like an obvious connection, and one of the big intents behind that office is exactly what I think Chair Fletcher mentioned. So definitely support it, and would love to see how that would connect with the building capacity in that office as well.
Great, thank you. Let's go to Supervisor Anderson, and then we'll go to Supervisor Desmond.
On item D, I'm not sure I understand completely what we're directing staff to do. Can someone just, staff perhaps tell me exactly what that means? That with all the changes, I was having a hard time tracking it. So it's just, what are they going to come back with?
Supervisor, through the chair, thank you for the question. Essentially, this will direct us to proceed with preparation of a report, as well as initiation of options for a program, either a pilot program or an incentive-based program, which we will start to develop under the coverage of the existing process that we're going through with the CAP update. So there's an SEAR that we're working on. That will provide environmental coverage for us. This will essentially advance any work by up to 2 years to have something completed and ready by CAP adoption.
Okay, but the purpose of all of that is to go to 100% electric. What does it mean to our existing buildings?
This would be an incentive program for conversion of existing buildings. So to convert out existing natural gas appliances to an electric-based appliance. So it would be a voluntary type of program.
Okay, so it's not going back and removing gas, it's simply getting people to move to electric appliances.
It's incentivizing them when the time is right for them to change out their appliance, to change it to an electric appliance.
Okay. I'm uncomfortable moving forward with that. I like everything else. And part of the reason why is driving home, I called some of my family members who live now in your district, formerly my district, and they had a brownout. And here we are with this huge heat wave in East County, and they've got no chance of relief. And I don't want to turn around and tell people that we're going to make them make this change until our infrastructure is bulletproof and can guarantee that they're going to have access. I'm not going to turn East County into a third world nation.
So just real quick, nothing in item D turns East County into a third world nation, but second thing is it doesn't actually do anything. It's to go prepare some options that can come back to the board that we can consider. It's just looking at what might work, what might not work, taking into account all the considerations, and then bring us things that we could consider implementing at a future date. It doesn't by itself take any action other than to go see what might be viable, what may not be viable, and then we'll come back as a board and make determinations on what we'd want to do moving
Is it
forward.
possible to look at the actual
I would assume looking at the sustainability of the electric system as a part of electrifying.
Yes, Chair.
So in some ways, the point you're making, if it's right, would be something that would be born out of that report.
Okay.
So it's just to give us the information.
Well, that's why I wanted the clarity.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it just gives us the information, and then at a future date, we can look at this information and decide what we want to do, how we'd want to do it, when, and where. All right, Supervisor Desmond.
Well, I'm hung up on one of that same thing. Are we deciding that we want all new construction to be all electric?
Guys, we're not deciding anything. We're deciding that we want to get some information about what options may be around electrifying. That's all we're doing. We're going to hire a consultant who's going to produce a report, and we're going to get a report.
Okay. Then the next question is, I noticed there's $350,000 in there that is now, we're not waiting to be identified. Where's that coming from?
Supervisor Desmond, that's actually coming from our Office of Sustainability and Environmental Justice budget that we currently have in the operational.
Well, then why was it in there before then that we were going to find it? And it was just lined out. So you already, I guess maybe you got a heads up and so you found another source for it, or?
No. In our existing board letter as well, we had identified it. What we've been doing most recently enterprise-wide is to highlight the cost of each component just from a public transparency standpoint of what the costs are. But in this situation, this is very much aligned with the funding that we've received for regional decarbonization.
So you've got the money? Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, because it said we got to find it, but here, originally. You know, I'm okay with that as long as these are all coming back as options. And just to kind of bounce off of your idea, Chair, though, consultants, I think, are, you know, I don't know if we can get expertise in-house on everything. And everything's evolving so fast and so quickly. And I don't know that, you know, if we hire somebody, if they're going to have the expertise we need in 3 or 5 years or whatever. And so, you know, I'd kind of tread lightly on you know, we got to have a good balance between our own staff and also outside consultants. I see that. But to me, technology is changing so fast, I don't know that we can, if we hire somebody, that they're going to be the guru for all things. But as long as these are options coming back and there's no real decision on we're doing all electric, and as you stated, then I'm comfortable with it. Thank you.
Okay. And the staffing thing will come back. So, and I would caveat in there, we want to hire smart people. All right, we've got a motion by Vice Chair Vargas, seconded by Supervisor Lawson-Remer, adopting Action A in Item 2, along with the amended items in 3. Ask Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Supervisor Anderson. Aye. Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond.
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas.
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher.
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
We're going to go to agenda item number 7, notice public hearing around organic material ordinance update. I will turn it over to staff for their presentation. Once we give them a chance to get reset. And once you're set, please take it away.
Good morning, Supervisors. I am Tyler Farmer, and I'm joined by Claire Moss. Today, we are presenting on the Organic Materials Ordinance update with a request to the Board to adopt the staff recommendation to amend the zoning ordinance and regulatory code. This project supports the Department of Public Works strategic plan to reduce waste and the 2018 Climate Action Plan to get us to an 80% waste diversion by 2030, and it aligns with the county's regional decarbonization framework to move the region toward a zero carbon emissions future. There have been a lot of changes to organic material management in the last year due to changes in state laws, including changes the way organic materials are picked up curbside. While these changes relate to the project, the Organic Materials Ordinance update is specifically about making it easier to set up composting practices in the unincorporated area, which supports state law through the diversion of organic materials from the landfill. Before we get into the project's purpose, we want to clarify by what we mean with the term organic materials. These materials include tree and yard trimming or other plant materials, generally known as green materials. Then we have agricultural materials, which are materials from the farm. This includes manures, crop residues, orchard and vineyard trimmings, and others. And then next we have food materials, which are materials from food processing establishments, such as restaurants, grocery stores, and cafeterias. And then we have vegetative food, which is a subset of food materials, but also includes those that are plant-based and natural, that do not include any salts, preservatives, fats, or oils. Examples of vegetative food include fruits, vegetables, coffee grounds, and others. In addition to organic materials, composting has other terminology that is helpful to understand. Static piles, which let organic materials sit passively while they break down, is one of these practices. Examples may include an open air or covered aerated pile. Next, we have windrow composting, which is a long row of compost pile that is typically turned mechanically or manually. Next, we have in-vessel composting, which refers to composting process that occurs in a drum, silo, bin, or similar device. And this can include small-scale anaerobic digestion as well, which breaks down organic materials without oxygen. Next, we have simple enclosed containers, which is when organic materials are broken down within a simple enclosed container, which is typically found in more residential environments. And other options include vermicomposting, which breaks down materials with the help of worms. Across the state, up to 45% of the waste in landfills is made up of organic materials. This takes up valuable space in our landfills and releases methane, one of the most potent greenhouse gases. The Department of Public Works found that there is more organic waste going to the landfill than there is total capacity to process. Annually, the region landfills an estimated 1.6 million tons of organic waste, and we only have the available capacity to manage an additional 500,000 tons. With the introduction of the short-lived Climate Pollutant Reduction Law, Senate Bill 1383, jurisdictions are beginning to roll out organic material management programs, including educating generators on how and why they should divert organic materials. Assuming that eventually 100% of the organic materials will be diverted, this would leave a deficit of just over 1 million tons of organic materials processing capacity annually. Many facilities are only permitted to process yard trimmings, and there's an excess regional capacity to manage those materials. However, countywide, there's a lack of permitted facilities to manage food scraps. Currently, haulers have contracts or own facilities located within and outside of the county to process organic materials, and then therefore, some organic materials are leaving the region to be processed. Now that we have discussed composting terminology and the market conditions related to the limited organic material processing within the county, we'd like to provide additional context on what the county has done to address this. The strategic plan to reduce waste, implemented in April of 2017, set a goal of 75% waste diversion by 2020 and 90% diversion by 2040. Achieving these goals would be accomplished by projects like the non-exclusive franchise hauler agreement update, our proposed project in front of you today, and other actions. In 2018, the Climate Action Plan, or CAP, advanced waste diversion goal to 80% by 2030. And looking ahead, the Regional Decarbonization Framework, or RDF, will provide a roadmap for the region to achieve zero carbon emissions future through a variety of sectors. Among them is the food systems and circular economy sector, which supports local produce and recycling of materials. The CAP update, which is currently under development, will continue to support diversion goals. As you can see, the proposed project is just one piece of the puzzle. If approved, this project will build upon the progress the county has already made and make organic material processing easier for those that want to set up composting practices.
Let's take a closer look at how the system works. This slide indicates how the zoning ordinance currently shapes organic materials processing within the unincorporated county. First, there are three major sources or generators of organic materials. They are farms, residents, and businesses. Community gardens also play a part within the system. In the legend, you will see how the orange line indicates organic materials that are heading to the landfill, whereas the green line indicates organics diverted from the landfill. Farms are allowed to process their own organic materials on their own farm. However, if they have excess materials and for whatever reason cannot manage their own materials on site, these materials end up in a landfill or a commercial organic materials processing facility. Residents can compost in their own backyards. However, this is limited to their own household materials. Excess material gets sent to the landfill or a commercial composting facility. Commercial businesses like restaurants and grocery stores cannot process their own materials, so their organics are sent to the landfill or a commercial composting facility. Finally, community gardens are allowed to process organic materials, but they can only process materials from community garden members. The key takeaways from this slide is that the current system is linear and misses opportunities for connections between generators. You'll remember from earlier in this presentation that there is more organic waste than there is capacity to process. Because of this, excess materials can end up outside of the unincorporated county and in some instances outside of the region. Throughout the planning process, staff conducted virtual and in-person community presentations, site visits, presentations at symposiums and compost training events, and focused conversations with environmental, community, and industry stakeholders to better understand this existing system and what generators want out of an amended system. Major themes of feedback included interest in alignment with CalRecycle tiers for organic materials and volumes in order to make local permitting align with state permitting, protection of farmers' current allowances for on-site composting, expansion of community composting allowances to facilitate sharing of materials and small-scale composting in regional and agricultural settings, requirements of a best management practice plan to safeguard public health and safety, and reduction of permit requirements to expedite and maintain affordability throughout the permitting process. Many farmers conveyed interest in the project as they face increased costs for hauling organic agricultural materials off their sites. Farmers also indicated an interest in being able to partner with other farmers for the management of materials and sharing of the resulting compost. All of this feedback has been incorporated into the project. As noted by the strategic plan to reduce waste and based upon the feedback we received from stakeholders, this slide indicates how changes to the zoning ordinance and code of regulatory ordinances will impact this system. Now, farms will have the option to receive materials from other farms, thereby allowing more organic material processing to occur on and between agricultural operations. Excess materials will continue to have access to that centralized system, either landfills or commercial organic materials processing facilities. However, changes in the ordinance will facilitate the creation of small and medium-scale processing facilities, increasing overall capacity for processing within the unincorporated county. Residents will be able to compost in their own backyards, provide neighborhood-level community composting, and give materials to farms and community gardens for processing. Farms can now be locations for community composting or commercial organics processing if they so choose. This action will reduce costs for farmers to purchase and transport compost to their site, provide farmers with a new revenue opportunity, and provide more opportunities for commercial composting overall. Excess materials can still go to the landfill or commercial composting facilities. Businesses will be allowed to give organic materials to farms and community gardens while again still having access to those centralized systems. Finally, community gardens will continue to process their own materials and now have the potential to be connected to the greater system. The key takeaways from this slide is that the proposed system utilizes connection and synergy to create a more distributed organic materials management system. As discussed earlier in the presentation, this project will expand composting options by increasing where organic materials processing may occur and by reducing the required local planning permits. This will be accomplished while taking public health and safety into consideration through a variety of operational and siting requirements that protect against stormwater runoff, pests, odors, and others. This slide provides an overview of the local planning permits that are both relevant to this project and in line with the state permit system. Please note that other permits from the state, Air Pollution Control District, County Fire, and Regional Water Control Board may still be required. Then, we will review the changes this project makes for the settings shown in the previous slide. First, there are composting allowances that do not require a local planning permit. Thus, there is no associated time or schedule, no associated cost or schedule. Next, some activities can be processed with a simple zoning verification form. This is the over-the-counter process that can cost anywhere between $500 and $2,000. Then there is an administrative permit, which can cost between $10,000 and $20,000 and take 6 to 12 months to process. For this project, administrative permits are approved by the Director of Planning and Development Services. Finally, there are use permits, minor and major. Minor use permits can cost between $15,000 and $25,000 and take between 12 and 18 months to process. These are approved by the zoning administrator. A major use permit can cost between $50,000 and $100,000, take 18 to 24 months to process, and is approved of by the Planning Commission. The legend that shows the dollar signs on this slide will be used in subsequent slides for quick comparisons. As we mentioned earlier, residents are currently able to compost their own materials in their own yards. However, the sharing of materials amongst neighbors is prohibited. Under the proposed ordinance changes, residents will have the option to take part in neighborhood-level community composting as well as manage their own material. Neither of these activities require a local planning permit. Currently, community gardens may process organic materials generated by community garden members, but are not allowed to accept materials from non-community garden members. Under the proposed ordinance changes, community gardens will be allowed to accept materials from non-community garden members for community composting purposes. These activities do not require a local planning permit. Currently, agricultural operators may process their own organic materials on their own respective sites. However, they cannot accept materials from other farms or establish community composting. There are some options for commercial composting, but it is limited to a few zones and requires a major use permit. If a farm is outside of those limited zones, commercial composting is not permitted. Under proposed ordinance changes, farms can continue to manage their own materials on site, as well as develop partnerships with other farms to share materials and compost, and set up community composting. None of these activities require a permit. Also, farms will have more options for commercial composting. This would be allowed on any farm outside of villages and can be processed with lower level permits than the existing conditions. The commercial permit level is dependent upon materials and volumes processed. This opens up small to medium scale commercial composting on farms and reduces permit costs and processing times overall. Commercial organic material processing includes acceptance of materials generated from another site, which will then be processed into compost and sold. Currently, in order to accept offsite materials, a major use permit is required, and it is limited to 3 zones. Chipping and grinding facilities can also compost, but this is required by a minor use permit. Under the proposed ordinance changes, there will be additional options for small to medium and large-scale commercial composting. These opportunities are with lower level permits than the existing conditions based upon the materials and volumes processed and would decrease the associated cost and time for permit applications for commercial organic materials processing facilities. For many composting practices, the Department of Public Works conducts compost trainings through its contractor, the Solana Center for Environmental Innovation. Through this contract, DPW provides more than 20 workshops and trainings annually. These events teach a range of techniques from small to mid-scale composting for residents, farmers, and livestock owners. Workshops cover topics such as best management practices, regulations, and tours of the county's composting demonstration sites. One-on-one technical assistance is also available for those new to composting or those in need of troubleshooting specific issues. The county also attends 17 community events to promote these programs and related sustainability initiatives. Additionally, through a contract, DPW partners with the Solana Center and retailer Dixieline to sell discounted compost and vermicomposting bins to unincorporated county residents. On July 22, 2022, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the staff recommendation for the Organic Materials Ordinance to the Board of Supervisors. Staff recommends that the board take the following actions. Find that the board has reviewed and considered the initial study and negative declaration, and recommend the adoption of the ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance and regulatory code pertaining to organic material processing. Thank you. This concludes our presentation. Staff are available for questions.
Thank you. Thank you all for the presentation. Very thorough and good. I know it's been a lot of work for a long time designed to get more composting. Would like to note for the record, our county staff are fully invested in this. Mr. Farmer and Ms. Moss have led a very rigorous effort around organics and composting. Some might say you two were born for this work, but we appreciate it and we're grateful for all of it. Let's hear from our public speakers and then we'll come back to the board.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 10 total requests to speak, 5 individuals in person, and 5 requesting to speak by phone. Also like to note for the record, we received 24 e-comments on this item. All 24 were in favor. Any members of the public that have requested to speak on this item by phone, if you could please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We will begin with the in-person speakers. Those in favor, as your name is called, if you could please come forward and stand against the east wall under the murals until it is your turn to speak. I'd like to invite forward Jessica, Mary, and Sean Ellis. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board, and if you can please begin by stating your name for the record.
Thank you. I'm Jessica Toth, the executive. I have some slides. I'm Jessica Toth, the Executive Director of Solana Center for Environmental Innovation. Next slide. Let me start by painting a picture for you about the possibilities of this ordinance opens up. Imagine an Encinitas fast food restaurant taking its lettuce ends, potato peels, and tomato scraps to a farm to be composted less than 1 mile away. That farm is on 67 acres of severely depleted soil, and so has been hauling thousands of dollars of finished compost from Valley Center 25 miles away. Next slide. Now picture a new closed-loop system which keeps materials within the community, resulting in 5 times more nutrient-rich compost, $250 a month savings for the restaurant, and in a 6-month pilot program, appreciable quantities of carbon dioxide equivalent avoided by not landfilling and by sequestering carbon in the soil. Next slide. But that was in 2014, and the county organic materials ordinance did not permit this arrangement. The restaurant had to go back to sending its food scrap to landfill, and the ag site could only create compost from the organic waste generated on site. Testifying to its significance, Solana Center was recognized with the state's highest environmental honor for conceiving and implementing this proof of concept program. Next slide. Looking out on the horizon, imagine a large grocery store that sources its produce from regional farms. That store is generating dumpsters full of inedible food waste weekly. Meanwhile, those regional farm partners need soil replenishment. This ordinance update will allow the grocer and farms to partner in a regional closed-loop system analogous to the community system we designed in Encinitas. Next slide. Education will be extremely important to making food waste handling, make sure it's handled properly and composting is done correctly. Training requirements should be baked into the new county procedures to ensure the best outcomes. We don't want composting to be perceived as anything but the great natural ecosystem it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to comment. I'm Mary Matava, owner of AgriService, a little bit different hat than before, and I wanted to let you know that one of the reasons I got into composting as the owner of AgriService was I used to have a soil testing lab, and one of the things I found walking around citrus and avocado orchards was that the biggest limiting factor I personally observed was the lack of organic matter in our soils, and to being able to take the urban generated organic matter, green waste mostly at the time, and turn it into usable materials for farmers and for our local landscapes is really, really important. I really appreciate the support that your staff, Tyler, over reaching out to both Farm Bureau and to composters has been really great, and also Michael Wansidler from the Organics Subcommittee with the TAC. But I would like to ask that the county spend some time using resources like Solana Recyclers to help educate people that want to get into this. It's really, really important. There's a lot of nuance, and just as one quick example, Cal Recycle has a requirement that you actually measure the amount of organic waste going into your disposals. And it is very, very onerous, and I think that this will put off a lot of people that could potentially get into this business. And so if we could work on having the county work with the state on streamlining some of this, it would be really, really helpful. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to my next 2 million tons of organics kept out of the landfill.
Hello, board. How you guys doing again? Local 230, Sean Ellis, UA Local 230, stand in support of this ordinance. We're excited. Organic waste can provide solutions to the very items that we are opposing earlier today. A circular economy is how we should have built our country, how we should have built economics. You can take organic waste, and with a lot of leadership and a lot of meetings and coalition building, we can build a plant that can take this said organic waste, not only manage it and take a linear system to a circular system, creating small businesses, creating business models, creating the ladder of opportunity into the middle class, while still taking the plumbers that put your natural gas in now to build the next circular economy systems when it comes to biomass, hydrogen, biodiesel, and the 27 other products created from waste itself. So Local 230 stands proud of this ordinance. We are looking forward and actually are challenging you now. We talk about pilot programs. We talk about what we can do with just transition. Let's reverse that, sister. Let's say transition in industry, not the worker, transition in industry into green, sustainable, dispatchable energy, utilizing organic waste and municipal solid waste. Like I said, we are looking forward to seeing this ordinance go through, and we are dedicated for the next however long it takes to take a linear waste system into a circular system to create the dispatchable baseload energy, green energy that East County can produce, North County can produce, and hint, 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 the city of San Diego has one of the largest landfills, and if the county was to work with them and figure out how to take care of the Miramar landfill that is self-reporting their carbon emissions, if we can figure out what to do with that, imagine the model San Diego can sell to the rest of the world about dispatchable baseload energy in a green way. So thank you for your time. Have a great day.
Thank you. And I'd like to invite forward the two members of the public in opposition, Audra and Oliver Twist. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board, and if you could please start by stating your name for the record.
Good morning, board. First, I do want to point out that I'm very disappointed that Tara, who is teleconferencing today, is not showing her face per my request for the best practice protocols.
Could you state your name for the record, ma'am?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Oliver Twist. So I do encourage you, Tara, if you are listening, to please show your face like the rest of the people in person are doing. 2, quit overusing the word crisis. It is loaded language used to shape a narrative and drive an agenda. If this building is on fire now, that is a crisis. Climate change, that's a manageable problem. I'm old enough to remember when ice caps were going to melt, polar bears were going to die, computers were going to crash during Y2K, and the lottery was going to solve all funding problems for education. We are an innovative species, and we can adapt and overcome. 3, keep natural gas. Remember the power outage in 2011 or 12? I was able to cook for my family. My motto is decrease dependency, increase redundancy. So also the Flex Alert that was issued today, they're telling people now not to charge their cars. So we need to keep options for people that are marginalized and that would rely on that. And then also, right now for your regional decarbonization framework, you have good intentions, but we're not quite ready for prime time yet. You keep telling people to jump out of the plane, but you'll get their chute to them by the time they land. Today is a perfect example. The stress on the grid is impacting people both for comfort and also for transportation for their EVs. This is a slippery slope, and I'm not against this item per se. I'm afraid of mandates, that everything starts out as a volunteer program and then works its way. Even the last item, money goes down to consultants, and then I feel like that you wouldn't even be investing in it if you weren't ready to go down that road. It starts off as voluntary but leads to mandates. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Username Audra. Yeah, that's the problem, is that you're trying to force everybody into a new way of life that doesn't really seem feasible, and like you are going to be destroying thousands of jobs. You may be creating more, but these people have to learn a new way of life. And so it's like, we're going to force you into this whether you want to or not. And the fact is, you can't even, like, everything that you're saying doesn't do what you're saying. I mean, compost actually produces methane and carbon dioxide. And you know that because of the landfills. So I'm confused as to why you think that you take it somewhere else and that doesn't happen. Like, it's just confusing. You're creating more problems with that, and composting is actually an extensive job. So now you're going to have to create people to have more of these jobs, but I don't know, it's just very one-sided with the way you guys think. You guys all think the same. There's nobody out here going like, well, what about this, or what about that? It's like conformity, and that just doesn't, like, it's what you guys have to push because you're being told that you have to push it. And that's not going to benefit the people. It's not sustainable. I mean, Nathan, you're talking about we're going to eat. Yeah, we're going to eat bugs. They want us to eat bugs because there's going to be a meat shortage. They have cricket flour that if you're allergic to shellfish, you can go into anaphylactic shock. But it's like they have cricket farms. And they want it because it's like got more protein than some beef, because the beef with the greenhouse gases, and it's just a bunch of BS. But I mean, it's like, I feel like you're going to be asking me to recycle my own waste. And be like, will you separate that? Because we're going to have to, I mean, you're already making us drink wastewater. Like, how is that not disturbing to you? Are you guys okay with that? Do you drink it? Will you drink?
Thank you. Now we will hear from those that have requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you will be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. I'd like to remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking, and we will begin with our first caller.
Truth. This item mentions decarbonization of the electrical grid, buildings, transportation, natural climate solutions, food systems, and the World Economic Forum's circular economy. Here's the natural climate solution from the November 17th, 2021 meeting. Quote, leave natural land cover intact except for renewable energy infrastructure, solar panels, wind turbines, and transmission machinery. End quote. That toxic lithium-based infrastructure is flammable and unsustainable. Wind turbines are killing thousands of birds and bats. They're emitting low-frequency and electromagnetic emissions, and they can combust into flames. Make coal cool again or build back coal. It's safer than lithium. This item claims the project will benefit residents, farmers, and gardeners to discard organic materials. Got news for you, supervisors. People don't need your help to bury organic food under the ground. It's standard practice for farmers and gardeners. Try actually growing something, you'll know that. For this disgusting, toxic regional decarbonization framework, using the excuse of we'll get sued by the state if we don't push a zero carbon emissions future, nobody buys that crap, especially when Nathan is a World Economic Forum member. The same organization that in their 2021 Sustainable Road Transport and Pricing White Paper promoted, quote, mobility pricing schemes, trip pricing, tracking vehicle positions, speed, carbon emissions, and other information via 5G technology, and frameworks at the local level to decarbonize transport, end quote. Are those strings on your shoulders, Nathan? Do you need scissors? You supervisors are full of green gas. And you too, Ryan, for cutting me earlier.
Thank you. And Chair Fletcher, not seeing any other members of the public in the call-in queue, that will conclude public comment on this item.
All right, thank you. Happy to make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second. Motion by myself, second by Supervisor Anderson. Not seeing any requests for speak. Ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Supervisor Anderson.
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond.
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas.
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher.
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present, voting aye.
All right, thank you all. We will now resume non-agendized public communication. I'll ask the clerk to call forward any remaining speakers.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 7 total requests to speak on matters not listed on the agenda, all coming via phone. For those that have requested to speak via phone, if you could please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. And we'll give the call-in public participant a minute to call in. We will now hear from those that have requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you'll be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments. I would like to remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. We will begin with our first caller, and again, if you could please state your name before beginning your comments.
It's Truth again. Jim, on KOSI on August 3rd, you said that you were against the mileage tax part of Standag's regional plan. But if that's true, then why did you vote in favor of the decarbonization framework when it paves the way for that and more? And why do you support the rest of the Standag regional plan when it talks about substantially increasing the price of parking and the cost of driving, as well as fundamental transformations in the economic, social, technological, and political fabric of life in California? Why do you support these things? Jim, you also said, quote, I want to see driverless cars and get us out of the driver's seat. And honestly, have computers take over. I think it'll be much safer, end quote. Well, Jim, did you hear about how the pedestrian detection systems in newer cars, according to a study by AAA, only avoided a collision 40% of the time at a measly 20 miles per hour, and the systems were totally ineffective at 30 miles per hour and at night. But you're still hanging on with your eye towards computer-controlled dystopia. And I watched AAA's B-roll footage. It's kind of funny to watch the dummy people's body parts go flying into the air. But Jim, in real life, do you think this will be funny when it's real human limbs being severed? In your interview, Jim, you repeated everything I've said at these meetings about the agenda of getting people out of their cars. But yet, you've remained silent every single time it comes to voter speak. Who are you lying to? The public, your fellow board members, or yourself? Nobody's buying that you're the good guy, Jim. Nope.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Good morning. This is Kelly McCormick. I'm a public health educator. I would like to ask the county to provide factual information about the health effects of marijuana, who is a pediatrician, recognized the need of the Cannabis Right to Know Act, which would have required warning labels on marijuana products. Unfortunately, due to industry pressure, the bill was gutted to the point of being useless, so Senator Pam pulled the bill. That leaves it up to local jurisdictions to perform this basic public health duty. People cannot make informed decisions if the only information they receive comes from the marijuana industry itself. Tobacco industry to put consumer protection ahead of profits? Of course not. Even so-called medical marijuana is sold to consumers without basic information about potential drug interactions, impaired driving, mental health effects, or warnings against use while pregnant or breastfeeding. When you go to a pharmacy to pick up FDA-approved medication, you will receive pages of information. Just yesterday, I received a call from the mother of teenagers who discovered they've been vaping marijuana. They don't believe her when she tells them that it has harmful effects on brain development. She has asked for my help in finding reliable information she can share with them. I get calls like that all the time. Public health is one of the most important responsibilities of county government. Please act now to require warning labels on marijuana, a broad-based public health campaign on the risks associated with marijuana use. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. Ann Brittle here. I called in because I, too, heard the program, the media program, regarding the parents and the young people who've been affected by marijuana. I was very impressed with a range of national parent groups that have been represented. One, every Brain Matters. 2, Moms Strong. 3, Johnny's Ambassadors. 4, Parents Against POP. And there are others, but they are national groups who've had firsthand experience as parents regarding their children's marijuana use, and they are trying to provide the information to other parents as they face the same hurdle. I am reminded when over a decade ago in this county, parents, some of which you're still hearing from now, spoke regarding what they were finding in their neighborhoods and with their children and friends. And we were finding pieces of foil with black markings on it, which turned out to be OxyContin that had been melted so the children could inhale them. And these pieces of foil were in our neighborhoods. Concurrently to the parents finding this, law enforcement were noticing that in District 3, starting in the west, along the 56 corridor, out into the unincorporated area, that there seemed to be some young people who had taken it on as selling it to their friends and were kind of the central gathering place for this as an illegal activity. And so District 3 led the charge to set up the county's still existing prescription drug abuse task force. This all happened because parents saw the issue first and tried at the Board of Supervisors level to tell you what we saw and what we felt needed to happen at the county level. And I feel like we're trying to do that again, that high concentrated marijuana products are creating havoc in the youth population.
Thank you. Your time is up. We'll go to the next caller.
Good morning. This is Peggy Walker. This is Overdose Awareness Day and Week proclaimed by the White House, which affirmed a duty to stop the flow of drugs from reaching our communities, especially fentanyl, which claims about 300 lives per day. We can't stop fentanyl without stemming the excessive flow over our porous border. But medical professionals say we can look at gateway drugs like marijuana as a preventive measure. Internationally recognized San Diego addiction and ER doctor Ronit Lev, for one, said she's never met a fentanyl overdose patient who didn't start with marijuana, which modifies the brain, making it more susceptible to other drugs. Prevention involves smart policies like SB 1097, the Right to Know Act, which the speaker mentioned earlier, authored by Senator Dr. Richard Pan, chair of the Senate Health Committee, and a pediatrician. This bill would have required warning labels, as mentioned, on products related to high-potency THC harms, severe vomiting, psychosis, suicide, and often addiction, which may lead to other drugs like fentanyl. Unfortunately, as the earlier speaker said, the bill was torpedoed by the influential marijuana industry lobby. The power of this industry and its lobby, an industry which lays claim to safety to thwart important state consumer education efforts, demonstrates the need for cities and counties to take the lead. A responsible approach would be county investment in effective consumer education and marijuana warning label requirements. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Chair Fletcher, that concludes the request for non-agenda public communication this morning.
That concludes the business before the board. We will go into closed session at 12:45. I ask all board members to be there at 12:45, and with that, we stand adjourned.
The board will now recess into closed session to continue consideration of those matters listed under item 23 on yesterday's agenda. If there are any reportable actions, they will be reported out after the conclusion of closed session today. The next regular meeting of the board will take place on Tuesday, September 13th, 2022 at 9 a.m.